on your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 3 o'clock. The Israeli military says it's preparing to implement phase 1 of Donald Trump's deal, but that it may still need a rapid response to neutralise any threats. There have been 3 airstrikes on Gaza City today, despite the US president urging Israel to stop the bombing. Hamas has agreed to some of Donald Trump's proposals to bring peace to the region. Belle True is an international correspondent for The Independent. She's told LBC it's hard to be optimistic.
We need to be a little bit cautious about saying that this deal has been agreed. If you read the statement from Hamas, it's very carefully worded. It doesn't agree to the 72-hour time frame of the release of all the hostages and captives. It doesn't mention key points of all the plans, like, for example, their disarmament, the demilitarization of the Strip.
The families of the 2 men who died in the Manchester synagogue attack are describing them as heroic, beloved and cherished. The police watchdog is looking into what happened after armed officers shot one of the men while trying to stop the attack. Dame Louise Ellman is a former Labour MP. She's told LBC the attack didn't come as a surprise.
Jewish people have started to feel very nervous, very uncertain, and it's to do with cries of hatred from marches on the street, instances of anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish hatred, school children reporting incidents, university students, even people going to NHS hospitals concerned about encounters they've had with staff there.
The Metropolitan Police are making arrests at a pro-Palestine march in London. The rallies are going ahead in London and Manchester, despite the Prime Minister calling for them to be cancelled. Sir Keir Starmer had asked organisers to postpone the events to respect the grief of British Jews. LBC's reporter Benji Haya is at the protest. He's told Ali not everyone is being arrested.
There are a number of protesters as well who are here in general solidarity with the people of Gaza. They have been allowed to peacefully protest. Only those that are explicitly for Palestine action are facing any sort of police action.
Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 30 people have been injured after a Russian attack on a railway station in northeastern Ukraine. Posting on X, Ukraine's president said 2 passenger planes were hit. Russian drones and missiles have also targeted Ukraine's power grid, leaving 50,000 homes without electricity. And Munich airport has reopened after German authorities shut it down last night. It was the second closure in less than 24 hours because of suspected drone sightings. There have been unidentified drones flying in the airspace of a number of other EU countries. LBC weather, there are gale force winds across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, light rain and brisk winds elsewhere, a high of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Emily Lang.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Vanessa Feltz.
Lovely LBC listener, very warm welcome to the programme. 3 minutes past 3 is the time. I'm Vanessa Feltz with you here on LBC every Saturday and Sunday from 3 till 6. As I bid you a very fond good afternoon. This has been a heartbreaking and frightening, destabilising, shocking, yet not entirely unexpected week for British Jews. In a country of 66 million people, a mere 230,000 people are Jewish. Some are religiously devout, observant believers in the Jewish faith. Some are secular, culturally Jewish, yet non-practicing. Some keep kosher, some are allergic to bagels, some pronounce bagels beigels, some, not many anymore, are Holocaust survivors. Some are regular visitors to Israel, some have never been. Some know the words to every song in Fiddler on the Roof. Some are into heavy metal. Some, like me, had a grandfather who fought as an officer in the British Army in World War II. Some fought Oswald Mosley's black shirts in the Battle of Cable Street. Some, like my great-grandma, sold underwear from a stall in Petticoat Lane Market. Some are surgeons. Some are politicians. Some drive taxis. Some are accountants, Jewish boys who can't stand the sight of blood. Some are hot-tempered. Some are mild-mannered. Some are literary. Some are gamers. Some are geography teachers. Some are a great disappointment to their parents. parents. Some cover their mothers in glory. Some are best friends with Maureen Lipman. Some wish they were. As a British Jew, I have not been appointed spokesperson for my people. Absolutely not. But I think I can say with confidence, in case, I mean, anyone who wants to say it's not true can certainly ring and say so, but I feel as if I can say with confidence that every one of the 230,000 Jewish people in this country has been personally aware of the 117% increase in anti-Semitism since the Hamas massacre in Israel on October the 7th, 2023, in which 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken hostage. 48 hostages remain in captivity. Horrifyingly, ever since that day, the most devastating massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, anti-Jewish sentiment has risen in this tolerant, multicultural country to the hideous, horrifying crescendo in Manchester of murder, loss, death and destruction on the holiest day of the Jewish year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. For most Jewish people, the news was appalling, but had a terrible inevitability about it. We had been dreading and expecting some attempt at annihilating us in equal measure. We had been spat at. We had seen Nazi swastikas daubed on our gravestones. Jewish schoolchildren had been warned not to wear their blazers for fear of attack. Jewish students were reviled and exiled on campus. Prominent Jews were threatened in person and vilely trolled on social media, facing messages of revolting racist bile several times a minute, every single minute, 24 hours a day. I came out of LBC after work one Sunday and a pro-Palestinian protester shrieked, Vanessa Feltz, fascist Zionist scum," at me through a tannoy before giving chase. On Thursday evening, as I broke my fast, I received, among a flurry of other ugly direct messages in my phone, one that simply said, Nazi. A man eating a sandwich outside a kosher restaurant on Baker Street was assaulted. Security, always a prominent feature of every Jewish gathering, was tightened. We tensed. We waited. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, told Palestine activists planning protests this weekend to recognise and respect the grief of Jews. He said pro-Palestine protests have been used by a minority for stoking anti-Semitic tropes. The deaths of 2 worshippers in a suspected Islamist attack on a synagogue in Manchester was a moment for mourning, not a time to inflame tensions. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, urged would-be demonstrators not to go, saying it would be un-British and a disgraceful and incendiary act. Stephen Watson, Chief Constable of Manchester, said protesters should stay at home in the interest of decency, humanity and a bit of sensitivity. The organisers of the Manchester and London protests have pressed ahead. Both protests are currently in full swing. Sir Mark Rowley, head of the Met Police, said the police do not have the powers to stop demonstrations. And my question for you this afternoon, lovely LBC listener, is, do you feel that the police should have those powers? Resources are finite and thinly deployed. Police are guarding synagogues and mosques. Is this the moment to extend powers to prohibit demonstrations when we know in advance we don't have the police available to keep the public safe? And when the Prime Minister himself says that these demonstrations are deeply offensive and downright terrifying amid a rising tide of anti-Semitic feeling. Or maybe you cherish our right to free speech and demonstration so deeply that you abhor the thought of any laws being passed to prohibit people taking to the streets when they feel the urge to do so. And I wonder if you think, as Ali Mirage has been asking, do you think today's demonstrations are disrespectful to this country's Jewish population, insensitive, ill-judged, that they could wait, they should wait, they ought to wait? Only the thing is that they are going on right now. 0345 6060 973. Let's go straight to Benji Hire, LBC's reporter, who joined us from one of the protests at Trafalgar Square. Hello, Benji.
Vanessa, good afternoon. Yes, despite the words and warnings of the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the head of the Metropolitan Police, their urges for protesters not to turn out essentially fell on deaf ears. The organisers of this particular event defend our juries, saying that cancelling the plans would have let terror win, that they're not anywhere close to a synagogue. That is true. They're in Trafalgar Square, and that this protest that has been taking place for the past few hours, in their words, is not conflating the actions of the State of Israel with the Jewish people. What I've seen has been quite predictable, because we've seen it before. The only difference this time, of course, Vanessa, as you note, is the context of heightened emotion in the wake of the attacks we saw in Manchester. And of course, we're only a few days away from the 2-year anniversary of the 7th of October attacks in Israel as well. What's happened here in Trafalgar Square is that hundreds of people sat down, they brought out those placards, and on it they wrote the words, "I support Palestine action." That initiated a police response because, as listeners will know, Palestine Action was prescribed a terror organisation by MPs earlier this summer. And so predictably what happened is that one by one, police officers have gone in and then led away those people holding those signs. Whether they're detained or arrested or they just get a street caution is less certain. But certainly what police are trying to do is make a dent, a slow and steady dent, in the very large crowd of those who have come out to explicitly defy the ban against Palestine Action. Those just protesting more generally in solidarity with the Gazans and the Palestinian people, shouting, for instance, free Palestine, they've been permitted to do so peacefully on the side of Trafalgar Square. There is a significant police presence, and that was the main concern as well from Sir Mark Rowley, that resources were being pulled away from communities that needed it most this weekend, in addition to the discussion that has been happening on air about whether this was the right and sensitive thing to do given the current context. But the actions have gone ahead, and we've seen what's unfolded in an unsurprising manner. What is clear is that it will take the police some time to actually make all the detentions or arrests necessary to fully get through this crowd, but that will not stop, even after this protest has happened, that will not stop, I'm sure, the debate about whether this gathering was the right thing here and now.
Have you seen or heard any anti-Semitic tropes being chanted or sung or inscribed on placards, that kind of a thing?
No, but I think that's quite unique about this event in terms of it's different, and they're clear to make this differentiation between the more routine pro-Palestine protests that we've seen across the country, in which there have been allegations that language like that has been heard, and events like this, which are quite peculiar, really, Vanessa, because what you have is almost like a silent sit-in, similar to the civil disobedience that you'd see in sort of 1960s civil rights protests. It is the majority, and I'm not saying all, but the majority are older people who sit there with those signs, and the only thing they're writing on those signs is "I support Palestine Action," maybe also the words "I oppose genocide," and then they're sort of quietly led or carried away. And so that's what I've witnessed here. I can't speak to other protests and marches and rallies that are still taking place across the country, in spite of the warnings from the government and police forces in different parts of the UK. But of course, we did see events in Whitehall on the evening of, in fact, the attack on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, a protest there that the Home Secretary said was un-British. There has been no comment since from the government in terms of this particular event since it's taken place in Trafalgar Square, but the police action has been quite hasty, and there is an incredible police presence that will, I'm sure, continue to try to disband this particular demonstration and this particular gathering, which in principle is about defying the ban on Palestine Action, but of course broader concerns about what's happening in Gaza have been shared by those sitting into the protest.
Benji, thank you very much. Let's go straight to Mohammed Asif, who's director of the Afghan Human Rights Foundation, which is part of the Stop the War coalition, and who was one of the organisers of a pro-Palestine protest which was supposed to take place today. Mohammed, thank you for joining me. You hear what the Prime Minister has to say about protesting today. You hear what the Home Secretary has to say. You hear what the Chief of Police in Manchester has to say and in London. What do you have to say about organising a protest today? Can't hear you. You must have your machine switched off or something.
Yeah, my thoughts and prayers are with the victims of the terror attack in Manchester, and we stand in solidarity with our Jewish brothers and sisters across the UK. We stand against anti-Semitism. But coming to protests, the government is trying to use the tragic killing of the 2 Jewish people in Manchester, and the government is exploiting that, trying to silence a peaceful protest,
Except, of course, that the government hasn't tried to silence any protests. They haven't. All the protests are taking place. There are no measures available to stop them.
What the government is trying to blame the Palestinian protesters, who are standing against the genocide in mass killing.
No, the government has not tried to blame the protesters. The government has tried to say that this is not the day to protest.
If you allow me to
I hear what you say. I did allow you to speak. You said the government is exploiting
is exploiting the situation, trying to silence a peaceful protest.
But I repeat, you've said the same thing twice, and I will say the same thing in response, which is the government has not silenced or tried to stop the protests.
But the government is trying to fuel, tension between different communities, trying to use the tragic killing of 2 Jewish brothers and sisters in Manchester. And they're using it against peaceful protesters, picking people who are standing against the genocide and trying to charge them under the terror law. I remember Bin Laden was a terrorist.
But they haven't tried to charge anyone under the terror law. They have respectfully suggested that a protest could be maybe adjourned for 1 week or maybe some more days. They haven't tried to exploit anything or suggest anything.
Happening, that thousands of women and children are being killed 24/7 with British-made weapons. The British government did not say for a minute that they will stop selling weapons to the state of Israel. Why didn't they just announce that for the sake of...
I don't think you seem to be able to answer or discuss the question in hand. And also I have to take a break now. So I think those two things are happening at the same time. I thank you for joining me. Mohammed Asif there, Director of Afghan Human Rights, part of the Stop the War Coalition. This is Vanessa Feltz on LBC. Please call on 0345 606 0973. The time is 3:16.
LBC.
Hi there, it's Louisa Zisman and Anna Williamson here from the Luana podcast.
Hey, join us as we tackle the week's big news, our lives and our listeners' antics.
You can expect lots of laughs, questionable opinions and hilarious stories.
Now, this week, we're supported by M&S, your destination for in-demand brands online. So shop your faves like Calvin Klein, Sweaty Betty, Lacoste and more.
Get the brands you love in one place, delivered straight to your door from M&S. And don't forget, find Luana on Global Player.
Yeah, I'm one of their biggest fans. I've got all the vinyl. First saw them at a tiny little place in Camden. Then as festival headliners a few years back. Oh, now that was special. So there's no chance I'd miss their world tour in London, Lisbon and LA. Good thing I've been saving.
From down the road to across the globe, saving gets you there. Join the millions of people already saving with NS&I. Visit nsandi.com.
At IHG's Holiday Inn Express, we know a great day starts with a great night. From our comfy beds to blackout curtains, sleep comes easy. And when you wake up, a proper breakfast included is our jam. Think all your favourites: sizzling sausages, fresh pastries, crunchy granola, and a hot cuppa. Holiday Inn Express by IHG, where great sleep and breakfast are always included. Book your stay today.
At Morrison's, we're cutting the price of hundreds of essentials across your big shop. Like a 4-pack of large fine ripened tomatoes was £1.40, now £1.19. Chicken breast fillet 630 grams, worth £5, now £4.65. And a 3-pack of onions was £1.10, now 95p. Oh, and loo roll, laundry pods, pasta, gravy granules and more. That's hundreds of prices cut across your big shop.
More reasons to shop at Morrison's.
Majority of stores excludes Morrison's Daily. Online may vary.
Vanessa Feltz on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
These are the messages that have come in the order that they've come in, so I'm not cherry picking or choosing. And certainly it's clear the team are not either, because they're sending in a whole damn lot of them. So let's start with the one at the top. Your presenter Vanessa, Vanessa Feltz is my name, and I did say so. at the beginning of the programme and again when we took the break. And if you look on the screen, you'll see it. Your presenter, Vanessa Whoever, has not uttered one word of the genocide of innocent Palestinians, only Jewish propaganda. She is typical of some LBC presenters. No concern for the genocide conducted by Israel in Gaza. Ray King of Porthcawl. And then Scott says, yes, Vanessa, today's marches and demonstrations in London, Manchester and elsewhere should have been cancelled as a mark of respect for the victims of the terrorist attack in Manchester 2 days ago. Those marches are becoming divisive, tribal and sectarian. They need to be halted for the time being to let this country heal and to allow communities to unite and not descend into chaos and angry rhetoric. We need a period of calm. That's Scott in West Hampstead. And Jeff says, if anybody thinks the people on this march will have any respect or consideration for any minority, they are deluded. The UK government has a lot to answer for, considering the huge rise in anti-Semitism in the UK. The march should have been banned. It is only there to incite hatred. Let's talk to Mike in Harrow first. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Vanessa. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for ringing. What do you feel about these marches and protests that have taken place today, straight after the incidents on Yom Kippur?
I've got mixed feelings. I am probably best described as a bleeding heart liberal, right. And I have been for most of my adult life. Over the last 2 years, my position has changed. Right. I believe that we have the inalienable right to peaceful protest. It is part of the English, British way of life. But with rights come responsibilities. Yeah. On our streets for the last 2 years, and in fact, from the time when Israel was being attacked by Hamas, on the very same day, applications were made for a march in support of the Palestinians, which I found very, very strange, because it's almost like somebody had prior knowledge of what was happening. Yes. But putting that to one side, the calls on the marches for global the Intifada, Palestine free from the river to the sea. Mm. There were various people giving disingenuous answers and saying, no, it doesn't mean that we wish to annihilate Israel. It doesn't mean that we wish to export an Intifada worldwide against Jews. And people have to understand what the Intifadas were. They were basically uprisings from the Palestinians who were, in terrorist terms, killing Jews indiscriminately, not attacking the military, attacking civilians. Moving it forward, where do we go from here? As a very secular Jew, I have never felt more connected with my roots. Yes. And I would describe myself as a Zionist. I always have been a Zionist. But my understanding of Zionism is the right for the Jewish people for self-determination and to actually have a homeland. Now Zionist is being used as almost a swear word.
Yes, it is. More than a term of abuse. That's what was yelled at me as a term of abuse.
Well, to hold views that Israel has the right to exist is almost considered to be an apostasy. From my point of view, I'm in my late 60s now, yeah. And I have never felt so much like a stranger in my own land. Yeah. My family history goes back to the 1890s in this country. Mm. My great-grandparents came to the UK fleeing the pogroms in Poland and in Russia. Yeah. My grandpas both fought in the First World War. Mm. In fact, I actually found some pictures of them in uniform the other day. Mm-hmm. My dad served in the Royal Navy. Mm. We had always described ourselves as British Jews. Mm. There was no problem about that. Mm. And please note, the word British came before Jew. Mm. We are now in a situation where, from my point of view, I'm seriously considering where I'm going to spend the final years of my life. We do have a right to protest. Of course we have a right to protest. But when people are on the street calling effectively for the annihilation of half the world's Jewry, because let's be fair, understanding about this. Yeah. Half the world's Jews live in Israel. We can go back through the history of Israel, how it was created, but there were always Jews in Israel. And Israel is the only country where being called a colonizer is the biggest joke of all. Because basically, the people have gone back to their indigenous homeland. They still speak the same language in Israel that they did 5,000 years ago. It just has a slightly different accent. There could have been a Palestinian state many, many times in 1948. There could have been a state, but basically, the day after the State of Israel was formed, the 5 Arab countries around them decided to go in and try and annihilate them. They lost that war. They lost the next war in 1967. They lost the next war in 1973 on Yom Kippur. Yes. And I remember where I was on that particular day.
Synagogue, of course. That's where I was.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. And the truth is, they could have had a state. I was always a great believer in the two-state solution.
Are you now? Do you now believe in it? And then I'm going to have to let you go because we've got loads and loads of callers. No, you don't need to be sorry. Of course you don't. Don't apologise. You're doing exactly what you're meant to do. Ring in and speak from the heart.
Do I believe? I believe there could be a two-state solution, right. But until the other side, if it was just a land dispute, this could have been settled years ago. It's a dispute about people not believing that Jews have the right to exist
Michael,
in Israel.
Thank you very much for calling and thank you very much for being so heartfelt. Let's go to Mohammed in Ealing. Mohammed, how nice to hear from you, but what a terrible week.
Oh, Vanessa, what a terrible week indeed.
Yeah.
First and foremost, can I once again on the LBC pay my respect to the victims of the attack the other day in Manchester. It's absolutely horrible. And I also want to, in the strongest term, as a British Muslim, as someone who's proud to be Muslim, but someone who loves other faiths wholeheartedly and just human beings in generally. I want to condone those insensitive individuals who have gone out in the streets of London and Manchester today who have, protested and go ahead with it.
There was a very vociferous caller on Ali Miraj's show saying, why are you condemning the demonstrators? Why should you? They're not protesting against Jews. They're protesting against what's going on in Gaza. It's nothing to do with Jewish people at all. It's all about Israeli foreign policy. Jews are not involved in this. Therefore, it's absolutely irrelevant and they should not be affronted and nobody should say that the protest shouldn't take place. That's what a very, very vocal caller just said to Ali Miraj. What do you make of that?
I think the situation in the Middle East is a very, very sensitive situation. But I do believe, that there should be some common sense applied. Everyone does have the right to protest, and I do encourage people when it is right, and they feel passionate about certain causes to use that right. However, just because of what's happened this week, and losing one life is terrible, losing two lives is shocking, and those heroes at the synagogue this week saved potential many casualties. And I think it's really, really insensitive. I think people you need to be sensitive, around this situation. As I said, it is a sensitive situation.
Yeah.
I've recently, Vanessa, opened a tech business which is currently opening, and I'm working with Israeli, some people call them Zionist individuals, but that's not my problem because they're business people. I like myself, and you wouldn't know the amount of people that I would count as close friends who have completely and utterly thrown me down the bus and said,
seriously?
Yes, seriously.
What, to have Israelis as a business associates means that they can't be friendly with you anymore?
Yeah,
wow.
Friends, even family I've lost, Vanessa, and those Israelis haven't done anything to me whatsoever. Obviously, I'm saddened about the situation in Gaza and in Israel for both sides of the pendulum, Vanessa. I don't want people in Israel to be killed and I don't want people in Gaza to be killed.
Of course not.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, same.
And I've read today online that recently you were walking down the street and someone was calling you fascist, this, that, and the other. Fascist
Zionist scum. I came out of LBC having just finished my show on a Sunday evening, and the protests are at 1:45 So there's never been one at 6 before. I wasn't even expecting it. Normally when I see one, I sort of cringe into the shop doorway, hoping nobody will recognise me, wonder why I haven't brought a COVID mask with me. realised that the reason I haven't brought one is I just can't bear to. I can't bear to cover my face to walk through the streets of the city that I live in and was born in and have lived in all my life. Every week I think I should bring a mask in case there's a protest and someone recognises me. Then I think, well, I'm not, and I don't. But it was 6 o'clock and I hadn't expected it. I sort of shuffled into the doorway of a shop hoping to sort of, disappear into the shadows. Also thought that I was being ridiculously dramatic because I hadn't been shouted at before, and I'd walked past many of these marches, and then suddenly it was over the tannoy, and it was, sort of deafening decibels, and I wrapped my head around, obviously, because you hear your name being screamed that loudly, it's hard not to look round, and some bloke is chasing me, for God's sake.
And
I just thought, if he catches me, what's he going to do to me? Is he going to kick me? Is he going to spit on me? Is he going to urinate on me? And I thought, are other people who are also protesting, are they going to join him? Is it going to be, what's going to happen? And some woman appeared. It was like a magical thing. Some woman appeared. If she's listening, she knows who she is, holding a child by the hand. And she said, Vanessa, you run, I'll head him off. This is happening in Piccadilly at 6 o'clock in the evening, for God's sake. I mean, and it's not because I'm a member of the IDF, is it? What's the reason for screaming that about me, for God's sake? Listen, Mohammed, I've got to go to the break, but it's always a great joy to talk to you. I always love it because it's always such a great leveller. Mohammed, as you hear, exudes humanity. Ali Mirage calling on his show for the humanity. Where's the decency? Where's the compassion? Where's the love? Where's the kindness? I've never met Mohammed in my life, but when his name comes up on the screen, I know it's going to be there on my show, and I'm always so grateful for it and for him. 0345 6060973. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC. The time 3:31. It's time for the news with Emily Lane.
Police investigating the attack on a synagogue in Manchester have been given more time to interview the people in custody. Officers can hold 4 of them for another 5 days. They're being questioned on suspicion of preparing acts of terrorism. Protesters are being arrested in London for supporting the banned group Palestine Action. Hundreds of people have gathered in London and Manchester, despite the Prime Minister calling for the rallies to be cancelled to respect the grief of British Jews. And Israel says it's getting ready to implement Donald Trump's deal. Airstrikes were reported in Gaza this morning, despite Donald Trump calling for Israel to stop bombing immediately. LBC weather. There are gale force winds across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, light rain and brisk winds elsewhere, a high of 15 degrees.
This is LBC.
Yeah, I'm one of their biggest fans. I've got all the vinyl. First saw them at a tiny little place in Camden. Then as festival headliners a few years back. Oh, now that was special. So there's no chance I'd miss their world tour. In London, Lisbon and LA! Good thing I've been saving!
From down the road to across the globe, saving gets you there. Join the millions of people already saving with NS&I. Visit nsandi.com.
One of the best things about a holiday with Saga is your chauffeur, who'll pick you up and drive you to your departure point. Whether you're cruising through Europe's iconic cities along the Danube or enjoying a rainforest tour through Costa Rica. Even better, they'll pick you up and drive you home again afterwards. 2026 season now on sale. Search Saga Holidays. Experience is everything. Nationwide chauffeur service available on UK mainland. Full terms apply. Over 50s only.
What if the doctor said months, not years? Sorry. I want to do one last job with you before I die.
Saran Jones and Jodie Whittaker star in an all-new drama.
Well, let's just say you'll be clearing 7 figures.
One job, that's it.
You can't get in between them. Because it's a game.
Some friendships are criminal.
I've kept my nose clean. Shut up, you love it.
You really don't understand the risks involved.
Gone.
New drama, Frauds, starts tonight at 9 on ITV1 and ITVX.
Speed, price, comfort.
So fast.
Table, window, toilet.
Just in case.
Quiet, luggage, legroom.
First class.
Speed, price, comfort.
No stops. Whatever your priority, great journeys start with Trainline.
This is LBC with Vanessa Feltz. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Good afternoon, Vanessa. I'm Jewish and a policeman. My heart was truly broken this week, and today has just shown again how hated we are as a community by some for just being Jewish and following our faith. I was recently the victim of a hate crime at my home address, and my mezuzah was stolen from outside my front door. This was reported to my local police force, who state that they take hate crime seriously. Some 2 months later, they haven't even investigated it. I have previously had anti-Semitic comments at work from other officers. There is an undercurrent of hatred against Jewish people in this country, sometimes through offensive jokes, but motivated by hatred and anti-Semitism. My heart goes out to the victims, their families and friends today. I no longer feel safe in this country. The selfishness of those who utilise their rights without responsibilities by holding marches today just shows a complete lack of respect. They don't care about the Jewish community. Those marches should have been banned. That's from Dave in Hazelmere. Let's go, though, to a different subject. Well, it's highly related, you may think. I suppose you could ring me and argue it isn't. I don't know about your perspective on it, but we will go and deal with it nonetheless. Last night, Hamas responded to Donald Trump's 20-point plan for the future of Gaza. Their statement stopped short of a complete agreement, but it has accepted some of the crucial elements that many see as necessary for ending the war. To discuss the position, Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mail, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What would you say is the state? What would you say is the state of play right now?
Quite tense. There's going to be a lot of tension on both sides within the Israeli cabinet and the Israeli Defense Forces, and within Hamas itself and among the Palestinians. Let's not forget that Hamas, on the one hand, and the propaganda is about supporting the Palestinian people, but on the other hand, they're utterly committed to wiping out the state of Israel and the Jews there. They're very conscious that they are now absolutely just fighting for their lives, the back against the wall. And either they accept what Donald Trump has put up, which is actually a very generous offer for the Palestinians, if not for Hamas, or the Israeli Defense Force will just continue to attack Hamas until it's completely destroyed. Won't destroy the ideology.
I mean, Boris Johnson's written a piece in the Mail today. I don't know whether you sully yourself by reading the Mail, Lieutenant, or whether you don't. But but in his piece in the Mail, in his piece in the Mail, he says that the agreement, as expounded by President Trump, is hugely favourable to Hamas and the Palestinians. That really all it kind of requires them to do is return the remaining hostages, both dead and alive, obviously, and in return, the concessions made and the financial reparations made will be immense.
Well, except that Hamas, except that they are demilitarized, they put down their weapons, and they have no future in the reorganization of Gaza. And dare I say, amen to that. I think Hamas have been the most ghastly guardians of the Palestinian cause, and the sooner they are driven out, the better. And there will be, perhaps, hopefully, some better future for the Palestinians at the end of all this bloodshed. But you're right in many ways. The Israelis will release more prisoners of war, more
1,700 prisoners, I think.
Yes, yeah. It's huge. It is huge. But as everybody says, if Hamas put their weapons down, they can be peace. If the Israelis put their weapons down, Hamas and the psychopaths that support them will try and wipe out the Jewish state. So this is a really crunch time for hopefully putting at least the Middle East on the brink of something new. But Hamas must go. And I'm afraid the idiots who keep supporting Hamas and are not prepared to draw a distinction between the Palestinian cause and the murderous intent of Hamas are doing the Palestinians no favours.
Well, what do we know about the level of support for Hamas among ordinary non-Hamas member Palestinians in Gaza? How, because they were theoretically voted into government, weren't they? I don't know, with coercion or without
20 years ago.
Yes, I know.
There's been no election since.
Exactly, but you know, were we to have the opportunity, which we don't, of asking ordinary Palestinians in Gaza, you know, what do you think this government has served you? Do you support Hamas? What do we know is likely to be the answer?
I think we'd find a mix. I mean, I'm afraid it's a bit like sometimes among the Shia population in Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Yeah.
It might be among the Russians to an extent. It might have been among Germans in the 1930s. There's been, 20 years, there's been absolute brainwashing. So some will be absolutely irreconcilable Many, I suspect, will also fear that so much that has happened to them is as a result of Hamas's murderous intent. And it is very interesting how few people around around the Middle East leaped to the defense of Hamas. The Palestinians were responsible for trying to unsettle the Kingdom of Jordan. They brought civil war to Lebanon. They supported Saddam Hussein when he invaded Kuwait. They've missed every opportunity to come to a deal over the last 30 years since Oslo. And what have they done with all the support and all the contribution that people like Qatar have made to Palestine? Build tunnels, build an arsenal of weapons to attack the Israelis. So much of this, I'm afraid, sits fair and square at the door of Hamas.
What would you say to, I'm quite sure, people whose fingers are itching now to send texts or emails here to LBC to say, that Lieutenant General Sir Simon Maillier, he's a Zionist mouthpiece, he's absolutely bludgeoned by Israeli propaganda. Vanessa, you didn't challenge him. You should have done. You're a Zionist. He's a Zionist. I mean, what would you say?
I served 3 years with the Sultan of Oman. I helped liberate Kuwait. I served in Iraq twice. I work often with the Lebanese armed forces. My commitment to, stability and peace in the Middle East is huge. But people, I'm afraid, like Hezbollah, like Hamas, like the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, connections between them, the jihadists, Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, have done the people of the region no benefit whatsoever. We need security, we need stability, and that way you get prosperity. And I'm afraid, but I absolutely stand by the right of Israel to exist, as I do with a good future for the Palestinians. But a good future for the Palestinians really does not rest with Hamas as their leadership, who are committed to exterminating Israel and the Jewish state.
Thank you very much indeed for joining me. We're absolutely fascinating guest, Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mail there, former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff and former Senior Middle East Advisor at the Ministry of Defence, author of 2 books on the Middle East as well, which are better worth reading. Let's go to Jane in Camden. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I just want to say that I'm neither Jewish nor Muslim, so I'm kind of watching what's going on within the UK and obviously across the world even, without any kind of affiliation to one religion or another.
Yeah.
But all I can really see with these marches is just the sheer hypocrisy of people. I mean, most of these people who are on these marches are white middle-class people. They're not doing the Palestinians any favours at all. They've been on Amazon and they've bought their kefir from there and they're wearing it and they're walking around and then they're going for their little latte afterwards. Half of them have no idea why they're on there. They don't know the history of Palestine and Israel. They don't understand all the facts, and neither do I, in all honesty.
And actually, neither do I to some extent, because it's incredibly complicated.
Exactly.
It really is. Yeah,
we're all poorly educated, but we're all happy to go and join a march, and just because it's in vogue and we want to be there. And they're not helping the Palestinian people at all. They're there for their own benefit. They're there so that they can be seen, so that their lives can be interesting.
Do you feel that the Prime Minister was right when he said it would be disrespectful to the Jewish community straight after the events of Yom Kippur?
I mean, totally disrespectful, but also disrespectful to Muslims as well. Because these people aren't there to help Muslims. They're there to just be seen. It's kind of like Extinction Rebellion, the sheer hypocrisy of it. I mean, I have friends of mine who are Muslim, and I'm terrified because I think, when these people, I almost said something else, but when these people are out on these marches, all they're doing is stirring up hate and more hate and more hate and more hate. I get that there needs to be done, or something needs to be done in Gaza. I get that. And I get that the Palestinian people need to have their own autonomy and their own, their own sense of peace, where they can run their own country and their economy and live a normal life like everybody else. But the hypocrisy of people, it drives me insane. I mean, you've had Muslims ringing up with their excuses as to why this, that and the other, the same on the Jewish side as well. But we have to kind of put that behind us if we want peace and if we want to carry on and we want to allow the Palestinians to live a normal, safe, healthy life.
It's just the phrase "put it all behind us" or "put that behind us" is absolutely terrific if what you're talking about, is an argument in a supermarket car park. But you've already expressed and beautifully the complicated, deep-rooted enmity and exceedingly complex kind of network of events and feelings that's led to this situation, whereby the idea of just putting it behind us would be utter bliss if it were possible. Jane, appreciate the call so much. Thank you very much indeed. Stephen says, my sincerest condolences for the tragic events this week. It's disgraceful that the pro-Hamas hate march has been allowed to go ahead. Stephen in Billingshurst, this is from, who very kindly says, I'm proud of you for presenting today's show under the circumstances. Oh, don't be silly, it's my job. You'll encounter some terrible people, I'm sure, but stay strong. Elements of Islam have been allowed to get out of control and go unchallenged for too long. Alan says the protest should go on. If Starmer and his government had spoken with the same conviction about the deaths of 7,000 women and children in Palestine in 2 years as he spoke about the deaths in Manchester, he and his government would be credible. And if arms sales had been ceased to Israel, that's Alan in Dorset. Vanessa says, Di, I hear your pain. Please be careful. These times are a time of tribulation for Jews in particular. I detest all racism. Humanity has never been tolerated of the other. We are all tolerant of the other. We are all flawed, all sinners, all damned, unless we learn to accept all and one another. That's certainly true. The number 0345 606 973. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC. The time's 3:45.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Terror at the synagogue.
Everybody else, he has the force. Go away. He's got a bomb on.
The attack in Manchester on Yom Kippur brings the rising tide of anti-Semitism into sharp focus. I spoke exclusively with Israeli President Isaac Herzog.
This heat wave of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish feelings all over the world, at the end, reaches bloodshed.
But is the government doing enough to tackle anti-Jewish hate?
Anybody who breaks the laws of our land, they must face the full force of the law.
Anything but a united kingdom. So where does the country go from here?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back Monday morning from 7. Listen on your radio, on Global Player and the LBC app.
Where does Tesco source its award-winning finest Chianti from? Well, it doesn't just come from any old winery. It comes from one of the oldest in the whole of Tuscany. We travel far and wide to source wines that we know you'll love. Yes, that's another award winner. It may seem like a little thing, but to us, it's everything. Tesco. Every little helps. Drinkware 18 plus available in the majority of larger stores.
With an Amex business card, Selena's earning points renovating her skin clinic and refreshing the builders.
14 coffees and 28 sugars, please.
And on new adjustable chairs for every room. And she can use the points to lie back and relax.
Don't put ice cream on your brother's head.
Well, sometimes. And that's because with an Amex business card, your points can go towards holidays and more.
Search Amex Business Card. Terms and annual fees apply. 18 plus. Subject to status. Basic card also available with no annual fee, rewards or other features.
One of the best things about a holiday with Saga is your chauffeur, who'll pick you up and drive you to your departure point. Whether you're cruising through Europe's iconic cities along the Danube or enjoying a rainforest tour through Costa Rica. Even better, they'll pick you up and drive you home again afterwards. 2026 season now on sale. Search Saga Holidays. Experience is everything. Nationwide chauffeur service available on UK mainland. Full terms apply. Over 50s only.
This year, Amazon are increasing the electric delivery vehicles we use across Europe to 10,000. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where babies are made a fuss of, where we deliver footballs for kids' kickabouts, and where they deliver the football straight into next door's garden. Can they have their ball back, please? We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Delivery service partner vehicles across the UK and EU.
Vanessa Feltz on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Let's go straight to Omar in Birmingham. Hi, Omar. Thanks for ringing.
Delivery service partner vehicles across the UK.
Hello? That's not you, Omar. What can I hear? No. Okay, let's have another caller instead. Let's have Sarah in Rickmansworth. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Vanessa. So basically, yesterday, my lovely neighbour told me about what happened in Manchester, and I was just grateful that I heard it from her and not on the news. Because basically, I went for a dog walk. I had a really bad panic attack because it was like I was doing a Rubik's Cube of hate.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out which way it was coming from now and what it all meant. Like, literally last weekend, I'd been at this love parade against UKIP, where a guy next to me was shouting how foreigners are raping our English women.
Right.
And then basically I'm like, what? So now race is going to jump on the back of these deaths, etc., etc. I go into the supermarket and I just see the front pages, and it stands out how the Sun hadn't blurred some of the images, right?
Yes.
And I first thought it was a photo of the victim, because nothing surprises, okay?
Yes.
That's on a child's viewpoint when I walked in there, and I'm looking at that. And I'm like, you know what? The fact that the Sun kind of monetized on the back of their deaths by not blurring the image. And they're all thinking by such violent visuals is to perpetuate violent reactions, which basically means more hate. And the thing is, right, my dad was in a Ukrainian concentration camp. And, when he escaped here, he changed his surname, and I'm watching Who Do You Think You Are, trying to figure out why my dad, he died when I was 7.
Yes.
All of this, why did I end up getting 3 nose jobs? Because I used to get teased at school over my nose.
Oh, my love, you're in a bad way, and I totally get it, obviously.
Can we just have more love?
It's a feeling of fear, and it's
I want love in
yes.
this country.
No, I get it.
That's all we need. There's too much hate. Everything's mirroring hate at the moment, and the elderly. I was speaking to a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses who peacefully sit handing out leaflets this afternoon, and their son told them to be careful. They might be next up for hate, and they're a sweet little couple. And I'm like, them saying that to me, I'm broke my heart.
I know.
I just want more love and hate. We need to get on and play ball.
All right, Sarah. Listen, I'm sending you love through the radio. It's very extreme. It's very frightening. It's very unnerving. It's destabilizing. It's in every way heartbreaking, isn't it? The idea that people hate you because of who you are, and that's whichever ethnicity or religion or skin color you happen to be listening to me now. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The idea that all you did was be born and you're hated for it. It's a hell of a thing. It's a ghastly thing. And you can see why Sarah sounds absolutely and utterly broken by it, because when she says, I just want love in this country, I just want to be loved, she sounds so sort of angelic and sweet, doesn't she, saying that? I just want to be loved in this country. Yes. I'm so sorry. What a sad call. Let's go to Mohammed in Feltham. Hi, Mohammed.
Yeah, hi, Vanessa. I just want to just say that I disagree with the narrative where we shouldn't, or people shouldn't be protesting. Because
I don't know if it's a narrative. A narrative is a story. It's the opinion. You disagree with the idea or the opinion.
Okay. Yeah,
there's no narrative going on at all. It's the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister saying, don't protest this weekend. Don't protest after people have just been killed in synagogue. The Jewish community feels enormously under threat, because it is under threat, because we've seen that now. And therefore,
I totally understand.
Protest another day, like next week.
I totally understand. So I understand the logic that people shouldn't be protesting because out of respect of the 2 people that were killed. But then we got to understand that just because there was 2 people killed, it doesn't or shouldn't prevent hundreds and thousands or tens of thousands of other people from protesting to stop more people being killed in Palestine. So the reason that people are protesting, as you know, a lot of the people hold banners saying stop this genocide. As we speak, I'm sure hundreds or tens or whatever number of people would have been dying or under the bombardment in Gaza. As we know, there's various different figures claiming under 100,000. Some are suggesting more than hundreds of thousands. So they're not protesting to continue killing of Jews. They're protesting to say stop the killing in Palestine. I don't understand what is wrong with people protesting, or all the callers or yourself, anybody else that sees the protest as being wrong. I would love for somebody to call or yourself to explain why there's an issue.
I think people have called to explain why it's an issue, and I appreciate you giving your point of view. Thank you. Let's talk to Omar in Birmingham. Hi, Omar.
Hi there, you right?
Yeah, I'm all right. You?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good,
not
good.
too bad. Yeah, I think really I just echo the previous caller. I think the issue with the protests, and I guess I understand the Prime Minister's opinion on that, but I think what we've got to understand, it's been over 2 years since the sort of that Hamas attack.
On October the 7th, it'll be 2 years. It's October the 4th today, so nearly 2 years, yes.
Almost 2 years,
Yeah.
And it still really hasn't come to an end. And although, it's taken the UK almost 2 years to recognise the Palestinian state, and it's also taken roughly the same amount of time for Trump to come up with a suitable plan, even though that plan's in place. As you said previously, Israel are still sending bombs and
But you might say there was nothing preventing Hamas returning the hostages from October the 8th or the 9th. That was 2 years ago.
But I think the issue
or the
is...
10th or the 11th, there was nothing stopping the return of the hostages, which would have stopped, wouldn't it? The atrocities or the fighting straight away.
I think there is, because if you're asking Hamas to, get rid of their weapons, which is fair enough to do, but then it also then opens the door to Israel still having their weapons and still potentially attacking Palestine. And as you've seen, although Trump has been there to try and introduce some plans and some thoughts, it still doesn't really stop Israel from still bombing Gaza.
But as a central tenet of Israeli belief, is it to eradicate Gaza and Palestine, or is it to get rid of Hamas, the terror organisation that exists with its utter central pivotal belief to destroy Israel and push every single Israeli, every single Jewish inhabitant of Israel into the sea? So it's a fundamental philosophical pivotal belief, isn't it? So
I get that, but then you've got to ask yourself, although that might be the case, you've got to ask yourself that it hasn't stopped these attacks still happening, and what you've got to almost put into perspective is the amount of people that have died in Gaza. It's been tens of thousands. Now people have been beheaded, people have been shot, kids have been shot. So yes, maybe the words aren't to eradicate Gaza, but I think actions speak louder than words on this occasion, doesn't it?
I don't know. I'm still not certain about protesting in this country again, because there have been protests that have been immensely costly, frightening to certain sectors of the population, particularly the Jewish community, obviously, and they've taken place nearly every week in the cities in which Jewish people live, so that people have felt they couldn't come into town, they couldn't, they can't go in to go shopping, they're not sure what will happen to them.
And I'm the first to absolutely condemn the attack that happened the other day in Manchester, because that should never have happened.
No.
But I think it's easy to conflate the two. We are easy and very open to condemning that, but then it's also taken the UK almost 2 years to condemn Israel, and I don't think those words have even been used yet.
All right, so I'm just going to quickly move on. I'll tell you why. Not because I don't want to hear from you, but because my last call is from Manchester, and I would like to hear from someone in Manchester before this hour elapses. Omar, that's my reason. Thank you very much indeed. Ian in Manchester on the line. Hello.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
First of all, I'd like to say how disgusting it is that you suffered anti-Semitism.
Oh, thanks.
I am pro-Palestine, but I think out of respect for the grieving people in Manchester, the grieving Jewish population in Manchester, the protest shouldn't have gone ahead today.
Are you anywhere near Crumpsall? Do you know that area?
I used to work just around the corner from
the synagogue.
From there, I know the Jewish population as well. I also don't understand the logic of people conflating what's going on with what Netanyahu is doing to the Gaza population. And I know it started on October 7th, but I just don't know why people conflate that with Jewish individuals in this country. I don't know what.
Right, I'm going to leave that hour with that question just hanging in the air, because you don't know and I don't know. But I think the answer is simply racism, isn't it? Just deep-rooted hatred that is, disguised or masked in other things. I think that's maybe what we're getting at there. I appreciate the call in very much, and also all the calls we had that hour. Right, we're moving on now. At 5 o'clock, we're going to be asking this. Children are owed a formal apology by the Prime Minister for the chaotic school closures they experienced during the COVID pandemic. That is according to the former Children's Commissioner of England. Do our children really deserve an apology, or do you feel that the school closures at the time were necessary? But first of all, the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, says if she were Prime Minister, she'd take the UK out of the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, because it would allow us then to protect our borders, our veterans and our citizens. Nigel Farage sees leaving the ECHR as the answer to Britain's immigration problem. Others argue that pulling out of the treaty would damage our international reputation and breach the Good Friday Agreement. Would fewer human rights really somehow protect our citizens? Is this the direction you'd like this country to go in? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 4 o'clock, counter-terror police have been given more time to question 4 people in connection with the attack on Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester. They were arrested on suspicion of preparing terrorist acts. 2 men died in the attack. 3 other men are still in hospital. The Metropolitan Police have arrested a number of people at a pro-Palestine march in London. Rallies are going ahead in London and Manchester, despite the Prime Minister calling for them to be cancelled to respect the grief of British Jews. LBC's reporter Benji Haya is at the protest. He's told Vanessa there are hundreds of people in Trafalgar Square.
Sitting down, bringing out placards, writing on those placards, I support Palestine action, and then sort of one by one being led away by police into police vans in a fairly effective manner, it must be said. Sometimes a few police officers are required to carry the individual, often, though not always, an elderly individual.
The Israeli military says it's been ordered to halt its campaign in Gaza City. The country's government is preparing for the first phase of Donald Trump's plan to end the war. Explosions were seen above Gaza this morning, despite positive moves towards a peace plan overnight. Donald Trump ordered Israel to stop bombing the Strip after Hamas agreed to many of his proposals, including the release of all hostages. Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mail is a former Middle East advisor at the Ministry of Defence. He's told LBC Hamas should stick to the deal.
They're very conscious that they are now absolutely just fighting for their lives, the back against the wall, and either they accept what Donald Trump has put up, which is actually a very generous offer for the Palestinians, if not for Hamas, or the Israeli Defence Force will just continue to attack Hamas until it's completely destroyed. Won't destroy the ideology.
Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 30 people have been injured after a Russian attack on a railway station in northeastern Ukraine. Posting on X, Ukraine's president said 2 passenger trains were hit. Russian drones and missiles have also targeted Ukraine's power grid, leaving 50,000 homes without electricity. A teenager who was jailed in Dubai for having a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl has died in a car crash in London. Police in Tottenham tried to stop the car, but it was involved in a collision with another vehicle. A 19-year-old has been arrested. And Storm Amy is continuing to cause widespread disruption across the UK. Winds of up to 100 miles per hour have left thousands of homes without power. Parks have been closed, trains disrupted, and risk to life warnings issued in different parts of the country. LBC weather, well, those gale force winds across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland brought by Storm Amy are continuing. Light rain and brisk winds elsewhere, highs of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Emily Lang.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Vanessa Feltz.
Lovely listener, welcome to the programme. Vanessa Feltz here with you till 6, Saturdays and Sundays here on LBC. The time 4:03. The welcome warm and vibrant. Looking forward to hearing from you on this one. Kemi Badenoch says, I will set us free from the human rights straitjacket. Today she declares it's time for Britain to leave the straitjacket of the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR. In what she admits is a big change in party policy, the Tory leader says the move is necessary to regain control of Britain's borders and make Parliament sovereign once more. She made the decision, she says, after a review that she commissioned concluded that remaining signed up to the Human Rights Pact would put significant constraints on 5 key policies that she would want to implement if she becomes Prime Minister. She writes about this herself in the Mail today, and she says this: it's time for Britain to leave the ECHR. I've not taken this decision lightly. I've always been clear that we should leave the ECHR if we need to, but I was also concerned about the arguments that have been raised in opposition to leaving. The moment my mind was changed was earlier this year during my campaign for a national inquiry into the grooming gangs. Hearing survivors' horrific stories firsthand and watching as the men who had raped young girls in Britain avoided deportation by using the ECHR hardened my resolve that it was time to gather the legal evidence for leaving. So before the summer, I commissioned distinguished KC Lord Wolfson to advise me definitively on whether 5 key policies that a Conservative government I lead would want to implement would be delivered as members of the ECHR. First, could we take back control of our asylum system and lawfully remove foreign criminals and illegal immigrants to their home country or a third country such as Rwanda? Second, could we stop our veterans being endlessly pursued by vexatious legal attacks and make sure our military can fight a future war without one hand tied behind her backs? Third, could we put British citizens first when it comes to social housing and public services, because we believe that charity begins at home and those who have paid in should come first? Fourth, could we make sure prison sentences actually reflect Parliament's intentions? And fifth, could we stop courts treating climate change as a human right and allowing endless legal challenges to frustrate the changes that we used to make and need to make to our planning system? And the punchline of this is Lord Wolfson says, yes, we can. That's it, pretty much. So I want to know whether you agree. 0345 6060973. Should we? Is it time to part company with the European Convention on Human Rights? Let's start with Alexander Stafford, former Conservative MP for Rother Valley between 2019 and 2024. Thank you for joining me, Alexander. Good to have you on. Is she convincing? Has she convinced you? Lord Wolfson says go ahead.
I think this is convincing. I think it's actually very important. And I think actually the fact it's taken, frankly, so long to come to this decision, that they've actually commissioned legal opinions, gone through the arguments, actually shows a well thought out policy. This isn't a sort of knee-jerk reaction to the migrant crisis. It's actually, let's look at all the options. Let's look at how we can do this, and will it actually be effective? So I think actually it's great that Kemi's taken the time to actually really have a deep dive into this, and the conclusion is that we need to leave the ECHR. There's a clear plan to leave the ECHR, and this will actually help with issues like migration.
I mean, it sort of feels counterintuitive and against any instinct that any decent human being would have to want to leave something that exists entirely to protect human rights, because it kind of means we're anti-human rights if we leave, or at least it feels as if we are, doesn't it? You know, something that was created after the Holocaust to make sure that individual governments and countries didn't traduce and transgress against the human rights of individuals sounds as if it was entirely a good thing, would always be a good thing, and would never be something any of us would ever dream of wanting to leave. So what has changed?
Well, I think that the global situation has changed, especially with the migrant crisis. Now, one thing I challenge you is that we had human rights long before the ECHR, going back even to sort of Magna Carta back in the 1200s. In the UK, we've always had a great history of human rights, civil liberties, law and order, and protecting the individual. So we don't need a document telling us what to do or how to do it. What we are doing, and what Conservatives clearly have looked at, is does a document written 70 odd years ago, is it still fit for purpose when we have huge migrant movements, things which they'd never even envisioned after the Second World War, people who are clearly abusing the system, gaming the system, and not allowing individual countries to have sovereignty over who's coming to their country, and more importantly, who they can deport.
Right. So, I mean, one of the issues that's frequently highlighted in the press is when somebody who has committed a crime in this country is somehow given leave to stay because of their right to a family life. So they say, I've just got my girlfriend pregnant, or, I've got two adult children who live in Glasgow, I'm in Camden, I have the right to stay. And they are granted the right to stay, and the European Convention on Human Rights consolidates their right to stay. That is one example of the ECHR that people find very hard to stomach, or at least some people find hard to stomach, I would say.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly right. I think we have to have a conversation. We are now at last having a serious adult conversation about who we want to live in our country. And if people break certain laws and do abhorrent things to our populace, they surely shouldn't be allowed to stay here. And no piece of paper should tell them whether they should be allowed to stay in this country. But I think the fact this document has taken, coming up to a year worth of research and writing really shows the in-depth way Kemi and her team has actually looked at the issues, looked at all the issues, and come to a balanced conclusion. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing, a quick thing to grab headlines or media coverage. It's clearly been a long, well-thought-out look at the pros and cons. As Kemi said yourself, as you read out, she's taken a long time. She's changed her position after looking at some of the more abhorrent cases where people are abusing the system. We need to have safeguards in place, but people who are clearly abusing and gaming the system should not be hiding behind a piece of paper which is 70 years old.
When Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said 1 in, 1 out, and people thought, yeah, I understand that. That makes sense. OK, great. Instantly, there was a hold put on the out part of it. The in was OK, but the out was not OK. And I believe it was the ECHR that was cited as the reason that whoever was meant to be going out couldn't go out and had to stay here. Is that right?
Well, exactly right. And we're hearing again and again, when the Conservatives were in government, the Rwanda, whether you like the policy or not the policy of Rwanda, it got stifled by ECHR. And fundamentally, the UK government couldn't decide who stays and who will support in the country. And this, to me, undermines sovereignty of any government, of any colour. A government should be allowed to control its own borders, control who lives in the country, and who's, frankly, at a danger to its country.
Just explain the climate change aspect of this. What's the ECHR got to do with climate change? Is it that we're guaranteed a certain level of air quality that we're allowed to breathe? Or, no, I'm not kidding. Or what is it? What have they got to say about it?
No, I'm no legal expert, but my understanding is because with increased climate issues, whether it's water scarcity, desertification, there'll be, frankly, more and more people on the move. We're already seeing that. And therefore, as more and more millions of people will be on the move, we need to make sure that the people who do come to the UK are actually the right sort of people, the people we want in the UK. And also, we need to make sure that we have the resources and ability to assimilate and integrate people who come to the UK.
All right, so you're not nervous about this. You're not worried about this. You feel that if Kemi says so, it must be okay.
No, I think it's very good. The fact is, as I said, she's taken a year on her team looking at this, at legal opinion, actually, to me, underlines how serious she's looking at it and how serious people are looking at it.
All right, well, thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you for joining me. Alexander Stafford there. Let's go straight to Richard Corbett, former Labour MEP, the party's former leader in the European Parliament. Richard, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. You hear Alexander Stafford sounds pretty sanguine about coming out of the ECHR, doesn't he? He says if Kemi's done the research and Lord Wolfson-Casey says it's all right, it must be all right. We wouldn't really lose anything by so doing. We'd gain sovereignty. We'd be able to be in charge of our own borders. That's what we want. What do you think?
Well, I think it would leave us with Russia and Belarus as the only countries in Europe that are no longer signed up to the common core of human rights that we all agreed together, that was largely drafted after the war by British lawyers. And it's all based on a very spurious argument that this Convention on Human Rights somehow prevents us from applying our own immigration policies. It doesn't.
But what about the various examples cited of people who have, committed pretty heinous crimes or utterly revolting and repugnant crimes in this country who can't be deported because of the ECHR? It's brought into play, and the right to a family life is just one part of it, but the various other things cited as reasons why they can't be sent packing.
Well, people often invoke the ECHR hoping to trigger a legal case that would go all the way up to it, but it's actually very rare that the Court of Human Rights rules against the UK. It happened once in 2024, once in 2023. In 45 years from 1980 until now, there have only been 29 cases brought against the UK that have gone to the court on immigration cases, and only 13 times That's once every 4.5 years on average, has Britain lost such a case. So one person every 4.5 years has successfully challenged a case on immigration.
So what do you feel we will?
Absolutely minor.
What do you think, Richard, we will lose if we should come out of the ECHR? What will we lose?
We lose the standard of human rights that all countries in Europe, bar Russia and Belarus, have signed up to. A mutual guarantee on things like the right to fair elections, the right to freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, all the basic rights that we all hold dear, that we have all signed up to.
My previous guest said we have those already. Do we not have them already? Are they not already part of the British Constitution or British life?
Many of them are drawn on traditional British values that we pioneered, which we have extended through this to the rest of Europe. But because we've all signed up to common standards in Europe, a lot of arrangements are based on us maintaining such standards. For instance, the agreements we've reached with the EU on extraditing criminals that have fled from Britain to other EU countries, and the transfer of prisoners generally, is facilitated by the fact that all countries guarantee that they won't, for instance, torture prisoners, that there is a right to a fair trial, and so on. If we withdraw from that, courts in other countries in Europe will not extradite people we are seeking to have returned to the UK to face justice. Similarly, on the Good Friday Agreement for Northern Ireland, that is premised, it's written into the agreement that both the UK and Ireland will continue to adhere to the rights enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights, to guarantee, especially in Northern Ireland, that they are continued and maintained. If we pull out of that, we're in trouble. That agreement would have to be renegotiated. The Irish government has said it doesn't accept that we should renegotiate it in a way that removes these rights from people in Northern Ireland. The House of Commons Committee on Northern Ireland, chaired by the Conservative Robert Buckland a few years ago, reasserted that it's essential that we maintain our adherence to the
Richard, I'm going to thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Thank you, Richard Corbett, their former Labour MEP. So we've had an absolutely forthright pro and an absolutely forthright anti on this one. How do you feel about this? Are you with Kemi Badenoch, who's changed her position and now thinks we should come out of the European Convention on Human Rights? Do you think that would be the right thing to do, or is there something in you deeply, viscerally against the idea of coming out of something that guarantees human rights to human beings? Maybe you think that should be the very core and kernel of what we're all about. We shouldn't walk out of that and just be stuck with Russia and Belarus as the only non-members. Is that enough of an association to put you off? 0345 606 0973. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC and the time 4:16.
This is LBC. Across the UK, people like Phil face their toughest challenges alone.
It's a pain that I feel like the body can't comprehend losing a child because you are not supposed to outlive your children.
LBC's charity, Make Some Noise, is here to support people like Phil.
It's kind of a family that you never wanted to be a part of, and you would never choose to be a part of it. But now you're in it, you don't know what you'd do without.
You can change lives. Donate now at makesomenoise.com. Proudly supported by Furniture Village.
The big food shop is one thing. Having a big enough fridge is another. Friends popped round? A coffee machine beats a spoonful of instant. AO's got your perfect home upgrades from brands like AEG, Beko and Sage. Plus, we'll deliver when it suits you. That's why we're the UK's most trusted electrical retailer. Shop now at AO.com. Delivery charges and geographical exclusions apply. Verify most trusted at AO.com/trust.
I'm always up before the birds and the kids. Good thing Costa Express is always up too. Early starts are easier with great coffee. And if I grab one for Bob, I might even get some decent company. Large cappuccino for the bloke who's half asleep.
Oh, you legend. Now that's a proper coffee.
Should kick in just in time for you to remember which end of the screwdriver to use.
Costa Express. Quality coffee every time.
At
Morrison's, we're cutting the price of hundreds of essentials across your big shop. That's great value on breakfast staples, like Special Flakes 500 grams, was £2.35, now £1.95. 10 sachets of original porridge was £1.58, now £1.35. And a 700-gram tub of smooth peanut butter was £2.35, now £2.25. That's hundreds of prices cut across your big shop.
More reasons to shop at Morrison's.
Majority of stores, excludes Morrison's Daily. Online may vary.
Vanessa Feltz on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Vanessa Feltz here on LBC, taking your calls on the ECHR. Kemi Badenoch, I'll set us free from the human rights straitjacket. Is it an oxymoron, though? The idea that human rights are a straitjacket? Surely there's something we want, something we desire, something we want to foster and nurture, or are they not? Let's talk to Ross in Battersea. Hello, Ross. Thanks for calling. What do you reckon?
Good afternoon, Vanessa.
Afternoon.
You're doing well, given what's happened in Manchester.
Oh, thanks. Tell me what you think about this, though.
So, for me, it's very on brand of Kemi Badenoch to try and be the thinking knee-jerk reaction.
Talk about oxymorons. That's an oxymoron, isn't it? A thinking knee-jerk reaction. Can you be both those things?
Yeah, of course you can. She's trying to appeal to the Nigel Farage-style voter who thinks we need to leave the ECHR and human rights are the problem with this country.
Yeah.
And she's trying to also appeal to that middle-of-the-ground Tory voter that wants to think of things before they do things. When the problem with our immigration policy is incredibly complex. It needs a lot of legislative reform that I don't think she wants to put the time and effort into actually putting to the voters. So she's just saying the problem is human rights.
And what do you think will happen if we did leave? Do you feel that we would be free to decide on our own autonomously with sovereignty and without interference from outside, which is basically what she's saying, who we do have in this country, who we don't have in this country, and everything else that we need to decide for ourselves? Or do you think it would be a much more damaging thing if we were to leave?
The only thing that would change around migration specifically is that somebody else would become the target fault.
Right.
Because a few years ago it was all the EU's fault. If we leave the EU, things will be great. We can just close the borders. It'll be fantastic. Then the Tories had almost a decade outside of the EU when they were in power. Nothing changed. Immigration went up. The reality is we've had successive governments, Labour and Tory, who've not had the wherewithal to actually fix the immigration issue and our court system, which is on the brink of collapse.
Yeah.
And she's not proposing anything that will fix it. If we want to control immigration, take asylum, for example, quote unquote, the boat people, you need to open processing centres outside of the UK and allow people to apply from not inside the UK, which they can't do right now. Until that kind of thing is fixed, people are going to have to come on boats. It's the legal requirement.
Well, the illegal requirement.
Well, it's the legal requirement. To claim asylum in the UK, you have to be on British soil unless you're from a specific number of countries.
Yeah.
So how do you claim asylum if you're from Gambia, for example?
Well, the idea is supposed to be you don't, isn't it? The idea is supposed to be you do not come because you're told not to come because there's no legal way of entering, so don't come. That's the idea, isn't it?
We told that to the Jews in 1930s, and look how many of them got massacred because Britain didn't accept them.
Also true. We
have the responsibility morally after what happened during the 20th century and, given what is spiking up anti-Semitism-wise recently, we have the moral duty to accept people, help them, and if their country stabilises, send them back to their own country. If not, they start life here.
I'm fascinated to know whether the majority of callers will agree with you on this, Ross, or they won't. So let's find out. Thank you very much indeed for setting out the stall so beautifully at the beginning. Let's talk to Robin in Whitehaven. Robin, do you think this is just a kind of playing to the gallery, kind of crowd-pleasing thing to say, but means very little indeed? Or do you think it is time we came out of the ECHR?
No, I think we should stay in. I think reform seems to be leading the narrative at the moment, and I think it'd be scary times to pull out of the ECHR. I think the UK was a signatory to it in 1951 after the Second World War.
That's right.
After the atrocities of the Holocaust was. So it's pretty strange when we see the rise of anti-Semitism across the world. we have people at the same time calling for us to pull out of the ECHR, which I find absolutely baffling.
So do you find that Kemi Badenoch's reasons, that, I mean, I did read it all out at the beginning quite laboriously. I don't propose to read it all out again, but I'll just give you the very beginning bit. The moment my mind was changed, she says, she writes this in the Mail today, her own writing, the moment my mind was changed was earlier this year during my campaign for a national inquiry into the grooming gangs. Hearing survivors' horrific stories firsthand and watching as the men who had raped young girls in Britain avoided deportation by using the ECHR hardened my resolve that it was time to gather the legal evidence for leaving. Do you think that is convincing to you?
No, not at all. I think it smells of a politician who's gesturing to a certain part of the population, and I think people need to realise what the EHCR actually does. You know what I mean? It gives us privacy. It protects disabled people's liberty. It stopped people, LGBT plus, it made them be able to serve in the armed forces. It decriminalised homosexual acts in Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. So you've got the same people, similar people who are calling for the against the ID cards, but then saying pull out the ECHR. Yep. When that gives us privacy, that protects us from the state, gives us privacy and liberty. So if we pull out of that, the state, a rogue state, you know what I mean, could do anything they want. You're giving away your privacy on your liberty, but then they complain about these digital ID cards because it's an infringement on their privacy. I think it's baffling, hypocritical.
Thank you for the call. Let's talk to Sean in Frome. Hello, Sean. What do you think?
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm all right. I hope you're well. What do you think of this? I mean, it's quite when you read what she's written. If you take it at face value, it's quite hard not to get on board. She's a good sparky writer, and she writes about, autonomy and sovereignty, and, who wants to be told who we can and can't keep in this country. And the last thing you want is, the one in, one out. If that's going to work as a solution to curb illegal migration, stop people drowning in the Channel and everything else, then, let's get them off our backs kind of a thing is basically the punchline of it all. And it sounds like, why not? All right, then. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think that's a bit naive. I think you stand back from this, all it is political expediency. I mean, at the moment, they're nowhere, the Tories, are they? Nobody's listening to them. And this is shouting to try and get them, look at me. I was interested in what your gentleman said earlier, Alexander, I think his name, when he was, we're always, from politicians on the right, we're always getting this about holding Britain up as a paragon of virtue when it comes to human rights. Yes. We weren't. We've done quite a lot of dreadful things in our time in our country. I mean, we've had pogroms in this country, as you probably know, in York and places up in the north. Yes, I do. And in the 50s, we had no blacks, no dogs, no Irish.
Although that wasn't consecrated in law. I mean, that was just obnoxious people behaving revoltingly, wasn't it?
It wouldn't have been allowed under the European Convention on Human Rights. Somebody would have taken them to court and it would have been thrown out and people would have been put in prison for doing it. So we can't, this holding ourselves up as paragon, we can set up our own human rights bill. Well, I'm sure that's what Russia and Belarus say. We've got our own human rights bill. We can decide what's necessary in terms of human rights within our own state. But it doesn't really hold water, does it? I think of one particular case that I can think of, which is completely off the scale, I guess. I don't know if you remember, there was a young child in Southampton who the British government and the NHS wouldn't allow to be treated. His parents wanted him treated with one particular treatment.
Yes, I do remember it. And they took him abroad, didn't they, in the end?
And they took him to the European Court of Human Rights and got the right to do that and got him treated.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to deny our people those rights that anywhere else. I mean, the only other thing I would bring to mind as well is we talk a lot about it being used to make sure that people coming across the Channel are dealt with more quickly. If you look around Europe, Belgium, Spain, Italy, they've got far more people applying for asylum in their countries. They deal with them far quicker, and that's because of the way we interpret the European Convention on Human Rights. It's nothing to do with the European Convention itself, but this with Kemi Badenoch, I'm afraid I just think it's a lead into her party convention. Look at me, I need to be seen because nobody's listening to me anymore. The Farage has taken them off to the right, and that's where she's going.
Did you happen to see the note from Michelle Mone, as in Baroness Bra, to Kemi Badenoch? Did you see that today? Which is nothing to do with this at all, but I just thought I'd say it anyway. Because I just thought, God, to talk about chutzpah is absolute, veritable embodiment of it. So Michelle Mone writes to Kemi Badenoch something along the lines of, I'm just paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, I don't want to come back as a Tory peer anyway. And that's if the Tories still exist as a party before the next election.
Oh, well,
ooh, ouch. Ooh.
Maybe you should join Nadine in Reform then.
Good talking to you, Sean. Thank you so much. Let's go to Michael in Chelmsford. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Vanessa. I'd like to follow on from the gentleman that was just on.
Yeah.
It's the interpretation.
Yes.
We always hear about rights, but we never hear about people's obligation to society. And it seems that you can break the law, and then go running to the law to protect you. You've broken your contract with society, and yet you're still looking for the law to protect you. And I think where this comes down to, is the actual judges.
I suppose, though, when you think about it, that is a human right, isn't it? If you've broken the law and if you've served your time, then you are entitled to human rights. I mean, in fact, you're entitled to them while you're in prison as well. Of course you are. But once you come out, then you're entitled to the human rights of a human being. And I suppose then you start to argue that, although you're a rapist, a murderer, or whatever it is, you get to stay in this country because you've got 3 kids and your mother's here.
Well, I think, just the very fact those heinous crimes, you've turned your back on society. I just think it's a ridiculous situation.
I mean, there are people who argue vocally and with tremendous passion that prisoners ought to be able to vote in elections. People argue all sorts of things with great passion about human rights and how, having committed a terrible crime doesn't mean that you forfeit the right to all earthly pleasures or any other thing. You're entitled to the same human rights as anybody else. But I don't know what would happen if we come out of the ECHR. Kemi Badenoch says it means that, we'll be able to say, get on your bike or let's put you on a plane, goodbye. But our gentleman from the former MEP said it's not true at all. It's been 13 people in how many years? Did you say 20
really
years?
Interesting to hear that.
Yeah, I thought so.
It's the way the media spins
everything. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
But what would replace the Court of Human Rights?
Nothing. Our own sovereignty. Nothing. They're not thinking of building some other thing. Our own courts, our own High Court. That would be it. That would be the ultimate say of yay or nay. That would be it. Our own court, the Supreme Court of this country. The end. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you, Michael. All right. I'll be taking more calls on that in a minute. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC. The time 4:30. And it's time for the news with Emily Lane.
Police investigating the attack on a synagogue in Manchester have been given more time to interview the people in custody. Officers can hold 4 of them for another 5 days. They're being questioned on suspicion of preparing acts of terrorism. 175 people have been arrested in central London for supporting the banned group Palestine Action. Hundreds of people have gathered at rallies in London and Manchester. The Prime Minister called for them to be cancelled to respect the grief of British Jews. And Israel says it's getting ready to implement Donald Trump's deal. Airstrikes were reported in Gaza this morning, despite the US president calling for Israel to stop bombing immediately. LBC weather, there are gale force winds across Northern Ireland and western Scotland, light rains and brisk winds elsewhere, a high of 15 degrees.
This is LBC.
Yeah, I'm one of their biggest fans. I've got all the vinyl. First saw them at a tiny little place in Camden. Then as festival headliners a few years back. Oh, now that was special. So there's no chance I'd miss their world tour in London, Lisbon and LA. Good thing I've been saving.
From down the road to across the globe, saving gets you there. Join the millions of people already saving with NS&I. Woo! Visit nsandi.com.
You can't see where the screams come from. You can't see what's below. And now, you can't see any escape. Ride coasters in the dark and step into the new Edge of the Forest scare attraction. Scarefest at Alton Towers Resort. There's no feeling like it. Book a day or a stay today. Open selected dates between September and November. Selected rides. Ride height restrictions apply. Age recommendations and additional charges apply for scare attractions.
Very good price.
That's cheap.
Very good price.
All the
trains.
Very good price.
Smooth ride.
Very good price.
Try it out.
Very good price.
Oh, wow!
If price is your priority, we've got that.
Best price guarantee.
Or we'll refund the difference. Great journeys start with Trainline. Subject to conditions and exclusions. Valid if a lower same-day fare is found elsewhere. Full T's and C's at trainline.com.
With an Amex business card, Selena's earning points renovating her skin clinic and refreshing the builders.
14 coffees and 28 sugars, please.
And on new adjustable chairs for every room. And she can use the points to lie back and relax.
Don't put ice cream on your brother's head.
Well, sometimes. And that's because with an Amex business card, your points can go towards holidays and more.
Search Amex Business Card. Terms and annual fees apply. 18 plus. Subject to status. Basic card also available with no annual fee, rewards or other features.
This is LBC with Vanessa Feltz. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
All right, we're discussing coming out of the ECHR. Quite a lot of passion about it, actually. This is Emma from Huddersfield. She says, I feel really passionate, Vanessa, about the issue of removing us from the ECHR. People are forgetting that it gives us protection from the acts of the government. Right now, it's about removing the rights of people seeking asylum. But who's next? The ECHR protected victims of domestic violence against the Tory government, trying to impose blanket application of the bedroom tax. The whole point of human rights is that rights are protected universally. The issue of asylum seekers is global and needs a grown-up European or worldwide approach. This decision just makes us worse off. And Rose says, I think Kemi Badenoch would do well to remember the politician Nigel Farage admires most is Vladimir Putin. Are Russia and Belarus the two countries that she wants the UK aligned with? Because I don't. I really, really don't. And no to leaving the ECHR. Decency has to win. That's Rose in Battersea. Now, we're going to take your calls on that. I'm going to get Robert and Ulf and lots of other callers imminently. But before we do, let's discuss this. The main Jewish security group in the UK, which is called the Community Security Trust, known as the CST, says that anti-Semitism has been allowed to grow by politicians and across wider society. David Lammy was booed and heckled by mourners at last night's vigil for the victims of the synagogue terror attack, and they were astonishing scenes in which the Deputy Prime Minister was told by furious members of Manchester's Jewish community that he had blood on his hands. Amid chants of shame on you, Mr. Lammy was also accused of allowing anti-Semitism to grow on the streets and urged to stop the marches by pro-Palestinian groups. As I speak to you now, the marches are going ahead. Let's discuss this with Danny Stone, MBE, Chief Executive of the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. Danny, thank you for joining me on the programme. So this phrase is anti-Semitism has been allowed to grow on the streets. Do you think that's the truth?
I think that's the reality, Vanessa. If we look at the statistics, we can see that the numbers have gone up. We did some work looking at online hate. We know that whereas there used to be 2 anti-Semitic tweets or posts on X per Jew per year in the UK, there are now 4 a day. That gives you a sense of the scale. And if you look at regulators, we see regulators failing in respect of challenging anti-Semitism. We've had anti-Semitic tropes used in the House of Commons and on social media by members of Parliament. So yes, I think there is a permissive environment for this, and it needs to stop.
How do you stop it, though?
Well, I think there's a number of ways in doing it. I think people have to be braver in challenging anti-Semitism directly. So I was very pleased to see today in the Telegraph, for example, that the Health Secretary is suggesting that he's going to look at changing the law in respect of the responsibilities of individual NHS workers. I think that there needs to be a review of some of the regulation that's happening. I think that we have to have stronger policing. Some of the recommendations that John Woodcock, Lord Warney, came up with in his report need to be implemented. But I also think that even, I'm speaking to you on LBC, we had to my mind, what was a false anti-Semitic statement read out on LBC that had to be apologised for. We've had conspiracy theories on GB News. We've had Bob Villan and their rant broadcast on the BBC. There is a job for the media to do in getting more quickly to this stuff and understanding it better. We've offered LBC anti-Semitism training, and perhaps I can work with you to get that taken up.
I don't know about that. I've got no influence at all in what goes on, apart from coming in and presenting this one show. But if let's say you were to give anti-Semitism training, not just LBC, but everywhere else, at Kellogg's, at Land Rover, wherever, what does it consist of? How do you train people not to be anti-Semitic? After all, we know it's one of the most deeply embedded racisms in the world.
You're right, but look, I think that it's important to recognise that most people don't want to be anti-Semitic. If you look at the figures, the Institute for Jewish Policy Research did a report that found that, up to 30% of the population may hold one anti-Semitic idea or attitude as true. Then, we're starting from a good basis. And it's important then to educate people on the tropes of anti-Semitism, the common themes, so that they can see them, understand them, avoid them, challenge them. That's what the training, whether it be us or anyone else who does training, usually a good training will help people to spot those tropes, and particularly at the moment, to understand how to delineate between criticism of the Israeli government, which I think is fairly straightforward, and anti-Semitism, not using tropes, again, and hidden messages in their discussion of Zionism.
Final question for you, Danny, just final question. These protests and marches are taking place right now as we speak. The Prime Minister called for people not to march. So did the Home Secretary, so did the Manchester Chief of Police and the head of the Metropolitan Police. Do you feel that it is disrespectful to the Jewish community to have marches and protests taking place today, straight after the Yom Kippur terror attack?
Frankly, I do. I share the assessment of the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary and others that these should have been paused. I think it's remarkable that there are demonstrations taking place with anti-Semitic placards and banners being held up at this time. And I would call on the organisers, as I have before, to challenge anti-Semitism directly from the stage, brief their stewards and try and kick it out of the protests that are taking place.
Thank you very much indeed, Danny Stone, MBE there. Let's go straight to our callers. We're talking about the ECHR, as Kemi Badenoch's written a quite spirited piece in the Mail today, in her own words, talking about the fact that she wasn't in favour of coming out, but now she is, and she explains why, and she explains the benefits that she think would accrue immediately. So let's go to Robert in East Grinstead and see if he agrees with the Tory leader on this one. Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for calling. What do you think?
That's fine, yeah. And this is the most calorific call I've made. Whilst waiting, I was near a packet of biscuits, and you know how lethal that is.
Do you think I don't know? I've got chocolate digestive right next to me with three bites taken out of it, so I know exactly what you mean. I'm living your dream here, right? And my own nightmare. This is happening right now.
Throw it out the window, Vanessa. Right now.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to, but then people say don't waste food. You don't know how lucky you are to have a biscuit. Don't do it. So I better not.
Probably kill a pigeon.
Exactly.
On its way down.
Exactly. If I do, I'll get such stick. I better not. I better eat it.
Okay.
I think the answer is to eat it. Don't you? Seriously, just as you've done.
Do it.
Yeah, I think so. And they call it cakeist policy, the policy of both having your cake and eating it too. I like that one. Tell me about the ECHR. What should we do?
Well, it's quite unusual because my dad is around here, my brother is around here, and we have different views, and we were just sort of talking about it, funny enough.
Yes.
And it creates sometimes some tension, not as much tension as you'd think. I remember during the EU, when we left the vote to when we left the EU or voted to leave the EU in 2016, it was said that some couples just practically divorced over it. It was such a major split back then. I would argue it was nothing compared to the divisions over the lockdown, but yawn. Anyway, we've gone through that. But my view is that for Kemi Badenoch, the problem with the ECR, and I'm sure she's highly, highly aware of this, so I imagine there's more to it, is that, it's literally, people would have made this point already, but it's like, Mickey Mouse in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, just chopping another bit of, 2 broomsticks that are filling the room up with water, only to have, 4 more filling the room up with water. It just goes on and on and on. You just walk. I think that it's weird. It's a strange situation whereby my belief is, I'm sure just simply using force in the channel has to be part of it. Because my fear, I was saying to your team before this call, I'm an artist. I've just finished an art exhibition at Walton-on-Thames.
Right.
And that's all over.
Okay.
Now, I'm having a bit of a break from that. I'm actually looking at my blue passport at the moment, thinking going abroad. But my point is, I was looking for part-time work, so I rang Border Force. I'm near Gatwick, I'm near the airport. I thought I'd get work with them.
And we know there's an enormous backlog of work to be done, so they ought to be delighted to hire you, shouldn't they?
I'm hoping to get through, because I don't mind getting involved on actual enforcement. I'd do it nicely. I'd be tentative about it, but I'd do my job.
And what's happened about it?
Well, the first thing I got, of course, was after dialing 118 to ask for Border Force's number, I rang the number, got an automated reply saying, this Home Office number is not in use.
Oh, great.
So, and that reminds me of the little bit of irony when, during the pandemic in 2020, I volunteered to work at Red Hill Hospital. And I went into the hospital to be a volunteer because I had trouble getting in my studio. And the hospital it wasn't obstruction. They just said, look, there's nothing to volunteer for here. We're calm as a barn. There's nothing going on. Looking aside at these things have arisen because there's a problem with visual open migration across the channel, which is a new thing, which we've never seen before. I think going back in time, I think it was when, certainly as far as I'm aware, Sir Keir was delaying the vote to leave the EU in 2016. And I voted
that feels
to
like
remain,
a century ago. I'm going to call it. I'm going to say goodbye. You go back to your biscuits and you eat the rest of them. I'm going to think of me while you're eating them. Let's go to Ulf in Hamburg. Hi, Ulf.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
This debate promises to be about as edifying and as absurd and as much fun as the Brexit debate. I mean,
because some of us made a living out of having that debate day in, day out for a good number of years, and people did always phone. People enjoyed it, even though nobody knew what was going to happen. It was entirely a hypothesis. Everyone enjoyed it tremendously, including me.
Yeah, sure.
So don't knock it. Don't knock it.
I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it.
Good. Okay, what do you think? Tell me, where do you stand, though?
Germany has reduced regular migration over the past 12 months by 50%.
Yes.
Tens of thousands of people get rejected at the border. Scumbags get deported even to Afghanistan. And Germany is bound both by the ECHR and by our written constitution, which is at least as strict as the ECHR. You don't need to leave the ECHR to handle stuff. So this is not about immigration. This is about you giving up human rights. I wonder why should anybody be interested in that? I mean, you don't have a written constitution. Your parliament is sovereign, which means whoever has got a majority can do as they damn well please. I mean, they can practically abolish your right to demonstrate. They can abolish your right to strike. Who might have an interest in that sort of thing? I just wonder. I mean, it didn't work out the last time, all this flag-waving nonsense. Maybe it will work out this time. And it is my understanding that Reform, who also loves this policy, is financed by about half a dozen people who are very, very rich. I wonder whether that has got anything to do with it.
I wonder. That sounds like a conspiracy theory to me. Anyway, Ulf, thank you very much indeed. Taking your calls, we'll go to Gordon, Paul, Patrick, other callers straight after this break. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC and the time 4:45.
Sunday with Lewis Goodall.
Coming up this Sunday, the city of Manchester is in mourning following the fatal attack on a synagogue. But what will the protest and policing reaction be as the country braces for more demonstrations? And as polling reveals that just 11% of us believe the Conservatives could be ready to return to government, can their leader, Kemi Badenoch, really keep the show on the road? Join me, Lewis Goodall, for complete coverage this Sunday.
Sunday with Lewis Goodall. Sunday morning from 10 on LBC.
Armella is a shy 2-year-old who loves colouring, but she lived with a grapefruit-sized tumour behind her ear. She desperately needed surgery. I'm Dr. Manjit Dhillon, a surgeon and Mercy Ships volunteer. These hospital ships provide free, safe surgeries in sub-Saharan Africa. On board, we were able to safely remove Armella's tumour. Now her future is bright. For more inspiring stories, visit mercyships.org.uk/future.
You're really building that business, Josh. That's because you chose to bank with Virgin Money, earning cash back on your supplies, turning expenses into rewards, on everything from Sanders to skip hire. He came, he soared, he conquered. Open Virgin Money's M account for business now. UK excludes NI, Channel Islands and Isle of Man. 18 plus. Terms and exclusions apply. Cashback rate of 0.25% backed by the current account switch service. Virgin Money is a trading name of Clydesdale Bank PLC.
Amazon has increased funding for employees to £3,000 a year every year for career development. Like Juliet. She's now a trained technician. And to her, the sound of machinery in need of repair reminds her of how far she's come. In 2 years, she's landed her dream job, providing her with valuable skills. That's up to £3,000 every year for career development at Amazon. Eligibility conditions apply.
Running a ceramic studio is all about balance, right, Nina?
Absolutely. That's why my business deserves the new iPhone 17 Pro. It can help me handle even the busiest workday, from planning my classes to keeping my kiln on track, so my business still holds shape.
The all-new iPhone 17 Pro as your work demands. Your business deserves the most powerful iPhone on EE, the UK's best network. BT and EE, better for business.
Verify at ee.co.uk/claims.
Vanessa Feltz on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
And Patrick's on the line in Battersea. Hello, Patrick. The ECHR, is it as easily disposable as Kemi Badenoch and Lord Wolfson KC seem to think it is?
They would like it to be, but the problem we have is that it is there to protect groups, individuals, and any other entity, regardless of race, religion, creed, colour, anything. Mm-hmm. It's there to protect you and arbitrate on behalf of everybody, every single human whose nation is a part of it. And anyone who seeks to dismantle it, I perceive, does not have the best interests of its people at heart.
And what do you think of the idea that we reserve and need the sovereign right to make our own decisions about our own people, our own country, who stays here, who goes, and that they are overruling us? The ECHR is effectively acts as a final check and balance, and we don't want to be checked or balanced by it.
No, we don't want to be checked or balanced necessarily, some governments would say, but that is because they have forgotten that our governments are not always benign.
Uh-huh.
Our governments are not always benign and not always the fine, upstanding institutions that we would like to think they are. And when they change, things could change for you, for me, for any entity or any person. And there is the danger.
I think that's very well put. And on that note, I'm going to quickly delve into something that I feel like I had a bit of a brush up against on my way in here. I'm not even kidding either. And that is Storm Amy. Let's discuss this because weather warnings are in place as the UK is battered by 100-mile-an-hour winds and heavy rain. Steph is on the line. Steph Golter, meteorologist at Square Raindrop. So good to have you on. And I'm much lighter than I used to be, but not as light as a feather. And I thought I was going to get blown over walking down Regent Street, Steph.
Yes, it is very windy. In fact, all of the country is under a yellow wind warning at least. So it is very windy for many places. Of course, the strongest winds are in the north. That's where there's that amber warning. And it is incredibly windy. We've seen winds up to 96 miles an hour. And for Northern Ireland, there we've got a provisional new record for winds in October of 92.
Struth. So where's the bit where you say do not leave your house, or if you do, have a ball and chain, not just the wife but a real one, a literal one, round your ankle so that you don't get blown away? And what about small toddlers and little dogs, those little picturesque ones that people put in their handbags? You better not try and take one of those for a walk at the moment.
No, not best to take those. I think when it comes to amber warnings, that's about the point where you start thinking about a ball and chain and whether it's really necessary to go out in the first place. When it's yellow, see, the problem is yellow warnings often come with a tree down, but not everywhere.
Right.
Just somewhere. And that's when it gets really dangerous. So that's when it's like, oh, do I really need to drive to this very rural location to drop my child off for jiu-jitsu? Maybe not.
Okay, and talk to me about how long it's going to last and also how unusual it is or isn't for this time of the year, and, whether we have to think about global warming or whether we don't have to think about it.
Well, this one was caused by some very powerful hurricanes over on the other side of the Atlantic. One of them, Umberto, was swallowed into a front. That front then got a tiny kink. Oh, not very important, you might think. But we had a jet stream. Now, the jet stream is the really thin ribbon of air that's high up in the atmosphere. And for the most part, everyone on the ground can ignore it and forget that it exists. It only becomes important when it gets stuck because it guides our weather patterns. So if it gets stuck, we either get endless rain or absolutely no rain and end up with a drought situation. So in this case, it was very, very powerful. The winds were over 200 miles an hour in this jet stream. And that means that the sudden movement of air and then the slow down as it comes out of the jet, that is what causes any storms underneath it to suddenly become very powerful. So our little storm, a little kink in that weather front that I mentioned, went under this incredibly powerful jet stream and explosively developed, and that became Amy. That's why we've just seen provisionally our lowest pressure recorded in the UK mainland. That was in Bolter Sound. So very, very low pressure, very intense storm. And yeah, that's why this one was particularly savage.
And how long is it going to last, do we think?
Well, it came over us and then, unfortunately, sort of stalled around Shetland. So that wasn't ideal. And that's why we've had all day, really, of these really strong winds. Now it's filling, it's easing and slowly beginning to move away. So the amber warning expires at 9 p.m. That's just in the far north of Scotland. And the warnings elsewhere across the country, the wind warnings, are till about midnight. So you will notice by tomorrow, yes, it'll be blustery, but it won't be anything like it is at the moment.
Thank you so much. What a fabulous weather update. Really appreciate it. Steph Goulter there, the meteorologist at Square Raindrop. Let's go to Gordon, who's on the line in Tring. Gordon, ECHR, what do you think?
Hello, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm all right. You could turn off the radio because I think I can hear myself coming back at myself there. That's it.
All right, hold on. Sorry, I've got my speakers on.
Okay, take them
off. What I would like to say is, we see it.
Tring. So let's try Paul in Worcester Park instead. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
Your previous caller, not the one you couldn't hear, the one before that.
Yeah.
Raised the very nonsense I wanted to speak to you about.
Oh,
he
go
mentioned
on.
about the fact that we need the court in case we get some malign government in the future. But if we get some malign government in the future, they'll just either repeal the law or ignore it. Ignore the court. So that is not a good argument, which I think you'll agree with. It doesn't make any difference. You know, if we get a bad government, they'll just ignore it anyway.
It's a despotic, tyrannical government won't take any notice of the ECHR. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, I agree with that.
That's the point. It should never be raised. The other point I want to raise as well, and it's raised a lot in old Lord Sumpton's book, who I'm a big fan of, is I think we're a lot safer under good old English common law than we are under constitution or written human rights, because English common law basically works on the principle that we can do anything we want unless there is a specific law that says you can't do it, where constitutions basically say that you have the rights to do these things if the law says it, and there isn't a particular constitutionally written out thing that says you can do it, then maybe you're not able to do it. So I would much rather cast my vulnerability basically on the fact that things will be argued under common law, which I think is a far safer thing than constitutions which vary on the type of government you have. Imagine a constitution written by the Taliban.
Yes, quite.
Wouldn't necessarily be a good one, would it?
No. So as Kemi Badenoch sets her stall out today, saying that various things that she esteems and considers to be of paramount importance will be available if we come out of the ECHR, and Lord Wolfson Casey has examined it carefully and thinks that will be doable, not easy but doable. How are you feeling about that?
I'm thinking it's utterly doable, and Lord Sumpton agrees with me. I don't agree with Lord Sumpton. He agrees with me. The fact that common law covers this, all these things can still be taken to court, and a judge should really make the decision. If say you ask me if you I don't like using the word rights, actually, but let's say if you're asking if you have the right to do a certain thing, a judge should look at that and say, well, unless there's a particular law prohibiting it, then yes, you can do it. And if we need to change the law to stop you doing it in future, then we'll do it. But as it stands now, common law says you're free to do it. Where constitutions, they may be good if you've got a good government, but I say, look at the various countries over the world and imagine some of the bad ones. Imagine the constitutions that they could write. Okay? It all depends on the power of the people who can put these constitutions into position. So a constitution in itself is not necessarily a good thing. I would much rather common law.
And you're a big fan of Jonathan Sumption, obviously. You're a big fan of his. It sounds as if you pretty much absorbed his book and learned it by heart.
he's a big fan of mine.
I wonder, when I meet him over the next vol au vent, I shall ask him whether he's a big fan of yours, Paul, or not, and I'm sure he will tell me all I need to know about that. So you feel as if Kemi Badenoch's onto something? Do you think it will be a vote pleaser, a crowd winner, that type of a thing?
If it's explained properly in the way I've just done it, and more people read Lord Sumpton's book, I think they'd get it. Yeah, common law has served us very, very well over the last couple of thousand years. I mean, it's only been the last 100 years or so that the common man has made himself more available to its uses. I mean, in the past, it was he didn't tend to get the access to it because he didn't get access to barristers, whatever. But with legal aid now, and people having access to barristers through legal aid, they can argue the common law arguments in their defence, which I think is much better. It basically works on the precept that all man is free, unless a government says you can't do something, you can do it. And I prefer that we come at it from that end rather than prescribing rules and regulations how you can live. Because otherwise, I can imagine sometime down the future where to keep a rabbit, either you'll have to have a rabbit as a pet or you can't have a rabbit as a pet.
Okay, as soon as you bring the rabbit into the picture, then the whole thing becomes completely confusing. We feel as if we're entering into the magic circle with the late Paul Daniels. We like it, not a lot, let's put it that way. All right, let me tell you what we're going to be talking about in the next hour. The former Children's Commissioner, Baroness Anne Longfield, told the COVID inquiry this week that children who lived through school closures during the pandemic are owed an apology. She described the run-up to the closure of schools as quite chaotic. Children not only missed out on the normal rites of passage, birthdays, proms, exams, but their mental health suffered. Their ability to make and sustain friendships was damaged. Also, with schools closed, young people's lives moved rapidly online, with some exposed to violent pornography, others struggling to access online lessons, some neglected, and some spending most of the day playing video games instead of learning anything. So do you think our children deserve an apology for school closures during the pandemic, or do you think they were necessary to protect our population from a deadly virus? 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 5 o'clock, counter-terror police have been given more time to question 4 people in connection with the attack on Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester. They were arrested on suspicion of preparing terrorist acts. 2 men died in the attack. 3 other men are still in hospital. The Metropolitan Police have arrested 175 people at a pro-Palestine march in London. The rallies are going ahead in London and Manchester, despite the Prime Minister calling for them to be cancelled. Sir Keir Starmer had asked organisers to postpone the events to respect the grief of British Jews. LBC's reporter Benji Haya is at the protest. He's told Vanessa not everyone is being arrested.
There are a number of protesters as well who are here in general solidarity with the people of Gaza. They have been allowed to peacefully protest. Only those that are explicitly for Palestine action are facing any sort of police action.
The Israeli military says it's preparing to implement phase 1 of Donald Trump's deal, but that it may still need a rapid response to neutralise any threats. There have been 3 airstrikes on Gaza City today, despite the US president urging Israel to stop the bombing. Hamas has agreed to some of Donald Trump's proposals to bring peace to the region. Belle True is an international correspondent for The Independent. She's told LBC it's hard to be optimistic.
We need to be a little bit cautious about saying that this deal has been agreed. If you read the statement from Hamas, it's very carefully worded. It doesn't agree to the 72-hour time frame of the release of all the hostages and captives. It doesn't mention key points of all the plans, like, for example, their disarmament, the demilitarization of the Strip.
Volodymyr Zelensky says at least 30 people have been injured after a Russian attack on a railway station in northeastern Ukraine. Posting on X, Ukraine's president said 2 passenger trains were hit. Russian drones and missiles have also targeted Ukraine's power grid, leaving 50,000 homes without electricity. Kemi Badenoch says she'd pull the UK out of the European Convention of Human Rights if she won the next election. The Conservatives are claiming it would help secure our borders. They say the EHCR has been used in legal challenges to stop the government deporting illegal migrants. Alexander Stafford is a former Conservative MP for Rother Valley. He's told Vanessa the UK doesn't need to be part of it.
We had human rights long before the ECHR, going back even to sort of Magna Carta back in the 1200s. In the UK, we've always had a great history of human rights, civil liberties, law and order, and protecting the individual. So we don't need a document telling us what to do or how to do it.
LBC weather, winds are easing around the country. It's going to be pretty dry this evening. Tomorrow we'll see a bright start for most, but it will get cloudier by the afternoon. There could be a few showers in places, a high of 16 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Emily Lang.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Vanessa Feltz.
Britain's children are owed an apology because the schools shut down in COVID and they were locked down. Children should be given a formal apology by the Prime Minister after the COVID inquiry ends for the avoidable mistakes made by the government at the time. Who says so? The former Children's Commissioner for England says so. Adults, says Baroness Anne Longfield, were prioritised over children throughout the pandemic as pubs, shops and theme parks opened before schools opened. She also described the run-up to the closure of schools as being quite chaotic, adding it wasn't clear who had responsibility for planning for children. The inquiry is due to hear evidence from those who were in government at the time, while the current government has said lessons have already been learned. This part of the inquiry looks at the impact of the pandemic on children and young people and whether they were considered properly in key decisions made by government. You'll remember, I'm sure, schools were closed in March 2020 and then they closed again in January 2021. Baroness Longfield said whoever is Prime Minister at the time of the inquiry's final report should say sorry to children because of the damage done to their education and well-being at the time of the pandemic. So what I really want from you, lovely LBC listener, is simply your memories and your feelings about what happened. So whether you were a child then and you were locked down and you couldn't go to school, whether you were a teacher then and you were glad of it maybe because you felt that you were at least being saved from the potential of catching COVID, which you thought might kill you or make you desperately ill, and a class full of children all coughing with germs might have been your downfall. So maybe you were relieved. If you were a parent left coping with working full-time under lockdown with all your children at home, what on earth did you do? How did you cope? Whether you feel as if your children are still grappling with the impact of lockdown, whether you think they were socially stymied, stifled, asphyxiated, they haven't been able to make friends in the normal way, fall in love in the normal way, learn, thrive, gain social kind of mobility in the normal way. Maybe you really do think that the government should apologise to your children for what it did to them by closing down the schools. Or maybe you think everyone forgets very quickly how desperately frightened everybody was of contracting the virus, and at the time we were just relieved to all stay at home and hope that nobody would cough on us or breathe on us or send us in some supermarket deliveries that were covered in germs, and we're just hoping not to die of COVID, weren't we? Do you remember how you felt then? How do you feel now? What effect do you think that the COVID lockdown and particularly the school closures had on your children, your grandchildren, and if you're a teacher or anybody who works in a school or somebody who had to work all the way through and look after your children at the same time, what effect did it have on you? Do you believe the government should apologise? 0345 6060 973. Really, everybody listening to this should have some kind of view on this. You ought to be able to phone and tell me what your perspective is on this one, because everybody looks at their children, looks at their grandchildren, remembers what they went through and will have a view. Was it necessary? Was it responsible? Was it the only thing that they could have done, the government? Or was it, do you think, knee-jerk, too quick, disorganised, and it put children at the bottom of the pile when it came to decision-making? Let's discuss this with Dr. Carol Homden, Chief Executive of the children's charity Quorum. Hello, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello.
I think some people would be astounded at the idea that the government, the Prime Minister, should apologise to Britain's children. But how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel that it's a fair point that is made by the former Children's Commissioner, whose office was not consulted, as I understand it, in the lead up to the school closures. But what is much more important than some kind of token apology to children is the fact that the lessons of the experience are actually learned, that we need to recognise that there were a number of things that were predictable, some of which were predicted and planned for, and others that weren't. And now we can see the trends coming because the recovery has not even begun.
What do you mean? What do you mean the recovery has not even begun? In what way?
Before the pandemic, there were a number of very important trends that we were already grappling with as a society. First of all, this is the first digital-first generation. And even as we went into the pandemic, we still had something like 10% of children intermittently missing school. That number is now double, and it has not recovered to the pre-pandemic levels. So something very important has happened there. And similarly, if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, in terms of children in the most acute need, for whom adoption is the plan for their future, we have not recovered.
On the other hand, it was a deadly virus. People were dying. The situation in Europe, which seemed to be slightly our sort of precursor, was terrifying. And it was felt at the time, wasn't it, by the leading scientists, Sir Patrick Vallance, etc., that we needed to be kept at home because we needed to be kept apart from other people because we needed to limit the progress and the transporting of the virus. And the way to do that wasn't to see anybody else and to stay at home. And it at the time, it was happening all over the world with the exception of Sweden, wasn't it?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And hindsight, is a very particular thing. But this was a dynamic situation with the science unfolding, where government did not know at that stage which sectors of society would be more affected and whether children themselves might carry the virus and therefore cause more challenges for those who care for them. That notwithstanding, I think it is a fair point that it's pretty indefensible to see the opening of pubs and clubs as a higher priority than reopening our schools.
And what do you think was the reason for that? Do you really think it was nobody cared about the children, or was it that there was nobody who was there to speak for the children? Or what was the reason that, for example, as you say, that pubs and clubs were prioritised? They opened again, beauty parlours opened again, hairdressers opened again, and schools did not open. What do you think was the reason for that? Was it some type of oversight or mismanagement or deliberate?
No.
What was happening?
No, I think that would be going too far. And actually, the Department for Education did secure additional resources. It did try its best to plan for vulnerable children. And for some children, for example, young people leaving care, the circumstances, did not worsen. So unfortunately, I wasn't within the government's decision-making machine at that time. But I can clearly appreciate that for them, ensuring that the economy remained on its feet was an absolutely overriding priority, as we saw from all of the application of furlough, for example.
Yes.
I think in terms of schools reopening, there are two things that we need to remember. One is that schools did not fully close. So there was a recognition that vulnerable children and the children of key workers did need to be in school for their safety and also so that their adults could work. The challenge is that so many children did not go to school who were in those categories. And that is something that the inquiry really needs to consider. But I think the second point is to say this dynamic between adults and children and whether children have a voice. It is absolutely clear to me that children's needs were insufficiently prioritised across government, despite the efforts of the Department for Education, which is why Quorum is calling for the development in the future of a cabinet role for children. Children comprise a large number within our population, but their democratic voice is not heard.
But isn't the Children's Commissioner effectively that voice? Isn't the Children's Commissioner's job to speak on behalf of the nation's children? Isn't that what?
Yes, Absolutely, and Baroness Longfield sure did an excellent job in that role. But it has become clear in the evidence that the Office of the Children's Commissioner was not properly consulted, something that has been recognised by the department. All I would say is that the Office of the Children's Commissioner is an important vehicle for children, but I would argue not the only one that we should have.
All right. Tell me about the legacy for children, because I have a daughter who, people probably know this by now, who is a child therapist and works, she's got private little clients, but also works in the state system. And one of the great missions of all the counsellors and therapists working in the state system is to try to help the children who were really damaged during lockdown when the schools were closed. I mean, some children were neglected, some children were abused, some children were ignored, some children were, maltreated and mistreated in all sorts of ways, and all the normal kind of checks and balances that going to school provided, including a hot lunch and, grown-ups to look at you and see that you were clean and see that you seemed to have gone to sleep the night before and see that you weren't being hurt or anything else, weren't there anymore. And suddenly there you were. And it was obviously for some children almost tantamount to torture. Some children properly torture, I would say, and some children frightening, precarious, lonely, isolating, and in every way absolutely hideous. And then for lots of others, it wasn't that level of neglect or mistreatment, but it was a kind of a disconnection from everything social that you'd ever known, and a sort of maybe hours and hours of either watching telly or looking at a screen, pretty much unsupervised. And so therefore, whatever was happening in your development, in your education, in your personal kind of evolving as a human being, was put in a horrible kind of stagnant paralysis as you just sat there staring at a screen for hours and hours of every day. I'm not kidding either. And lots of parents, and I was on the radio all day, every single day through the whole pandemic, and I'd get parents ringing in to say, mate, I'm working full time, I'm a single parent, I'm locked in, what am I meant to do? And they'd be like, well, the kid, the school only gives them an hour of something or other to look at a day, and the rest of the day I don't know what to do with them, and they're just, they are gaming and whatever and staring out the window for hours and hours. And you'd think, well, I don't know what to suggest, because it's absolute bedlam, the whole thing, a complete nightmare and actually impossible, So I wonder about all those children and whether you feel that they will forever bear the scars of this, or whether they will, as children do, people always say children are resilient, whether they'll somehow get over it. What do you think? Is it going to be a lifetime thing?
Well, children are remarkably resilient, but we have to remember several things here. One is that we surrounded our children with wall-to-wall news about death.
Yes.
So, there's never been a circumstance before when every single news broadcast was saying how many people had died that day from this infection. And we don't do that every winter with the onset of flu, for example. No. So we created stranger danger. We created massive anxiety. We placed children under stress about whether their granny was going to be exposed to this and going to die. Yeah. And so there is something very systemic that happens to children. And depending on the age and stage that you were at, it would have a different effect. But one thing that is absolutely clear is children depend upon the protective factor of adults in their lives and their peers in their lives, and not just their caregivers. That is how we learn social and relational functioning. That is often how we extend our vocabulary and see new horizons. And we block some of that off. But if you were a very small child, then the time that you spent in lockdown would have been a much higher proportion of your developmental time.
Good point.
Than if you were a teenager, for example, or a grown-up. You could say, well, does this disruption really amount to that much in 14 years of state education, for example?
Yeah.
But actually it does, because if you miss ingredients of a bedrock of learning, if you live in a household with no books, with no one who reads, for example, with 3 children trying to get on the same device in overcrowded situations that are driving stress upon you because of your parents not getting on very well.
Yes, of course.
These are all compounding factors. So what the pandemic did was compound the factors that that widen disadvantage in our society.
Thank you so much.
And so
Thank
far,
you.
we have not narrowed them.
Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate your defining it for us. Dr. Carol Homden there, Chief Executive of the children's charity, which is called Quorum. So I'm asking you, as parents, as grandparents, as older children who were locked down, schools were shut, do you feel you're owed an apology? Tell me, as parents, as grandparents, as neighbours, friends, uncles, aunties, do you feel as if the children that you know, maybe it's the children you work with, maybe it's your own children, your grandchildren, but do you feel as if they have been properly scarred by the shutdown of schools in lockdown, that they have not regained the ground they lost, that their personalities are not the same, that they have not developed in the right kind of way or the way that you hoped they would, that they somehow or rather, maybe you know exactly how, because maybe you remember only too clearly what it was like, but that the children have been failed, that they were not put first? That's what the Children's Commissioner, Baroness Longfield, says they deserve an apology. I mean, that's going to be a fat lot of use. Who wants to, hear the children, see all the children watch television and hear Keir Starmer apologise, for God's sake? What would be the point of that? I can't see any point in that at all, although maybe it would acknowledge that they were hard done by. Or maybe listening to this, you're just thinking, we had to lock down. You didn't want to catch it yourself. You didn't want your mum to get it. You didn't want your dad to catch it. Of course we had to lock down. And this is just part of the fallout of a pandemic. What do you think about this one? Do our children deserve an apology for the schools shutting down in lockdown? And have you seen in your own children, those you love, those you work with, a kind of arrested development? They haven't turned into the people that they should have done. Their education stopped at the wrong moment. They didn't somehow go on to achieve their potential because of this. 0345 6060 973. You don't want to give your real name, don't give it. Just you can be Mickey Mouse if you like. But I do want to hear from you on this one. I'd love to know what you think. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC and the time 5:18.
This is LBC.
Yeah, I'm one of their biggest fans. I've got all the vinyl. First saw them at a tiny little place in Camden. Then as festival headliners a few years back. Oh, now that was special. So there's no chance I'd miss their world tour. In London, Lisbon and LA! Good thing I've been saving!
From down the road to across the globe, saving gets you there. Join the millions of people already saving with NS&I. Woo! Visit nsandi.com.
Have you done any jobs since I was away? It's been 10 years, people change. We're going to steal a painting from the biggest gallery in Spain.
You've only been out 2 minutes.
If your daughter rocks up, what are you going to offer her? Half a dozen eggs or the chance to be set for life? But first we have to gather the team.
Starring Saran Jones.
That math got you in trouble before, has it?
Yeah. Is yours?
And Jodie Whittaker.
We come up with a plan and we execute it.
Some friendships are criminal. New drama, Frauds, starts tonight at 9 on ITV1 and ITVX.
At Morrison's, we're cutting the price of hundreds of essentials across your big shop. That's great value on breakfast staples, like Special Flakes 500 grams, was £2.35, now £1.95. 10 sachets of original porridge was £1.58, now £1.35. And a 700-gram tub of smooth peanut butter was £2.35, now £2.25. That's hundreds of prices cut across your big shop.
More reasons to shop at Morrison's.
Majority of stores excludes Morrison's Daily. Online may vary.
At IHG's Holiday Inn Express, we know a great day starts with a great night. From our comfy beds to blackout curtains, sleep comes easy. And when you wake up, a proper breakfast included is our jam. Think all your favourites: sizzling sausages, fresh pastries, crunchy granola, and a hot cuppa. Holiday Inn Express by IHG, where great sleep and breakfast are always included. Book your stay today.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply for quick reply, affects your concentration, and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
Vanessa Feltz on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Are Britain's children owed an apology for the closure of our schools during lockdown? Have most of them never recovered? Will they ever? And should the Prime Minister apologise? That is not something I dreamt up. It's something that the Children's Commissioner, Baroness Longfield, says. Let's talk to Claire in Hackney first. Thank you for your calls, which are coming in on 0345 6060 973. Claire, thanks for ringing. What do you feel about this?
I think that an apology is pointless because it doesn't mean anything, because the government haven't changed the way that they treat the children in schools anyway.
What do you mean? Which way do they treat children? What do you mean?
I meant they haven't recognised the fact that the schools were closed for such a long time and that children's relationships were affected and that their trust in the school system was affected. They went back to school and it was business as usual, so they were expected to sit lots and lots of exams. Most of the curriculum was missed out. Everything was switched to online learning. Parents' meetings were virtual. You couldn't even meet teachers face to face, and nothing changed.
And tell me about. Are you talking about your own children in this? It's not just a general theory. You've got kids yourself, have you?
I do, and I have grandchildren, and I have nieces and nephews, and my daughter has lots of friends, and I have.
Yeah. And so tell me what you think was the effect, because I think some people will think, okay, for a few months, on 2 occasions they couldn't go into school, all right. Some of them did lots of schoolwork online, some of them didn't. Some of them had parents who read them, Charles Dickens and Moby Dick. Some of them had parents who didn't speak to them at all. Okay, all right. And then everyone gets over it. But you seem to think that the legacy and the effect is much longer than that.
It's not just about that. School is more than just learning, isn't it? School is about socialisation, about relationships.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, their routine, everything they knew was just shut down. And they didn't understand it. My daughter was 10 at the time. She didn't understand it. Outside on the street was completely quiet. She didn't understand why everything was so quiet. She couldn't see her teacher. She couldn't see her friends. She couldn't go, get dressed up in her school uniform.
Yeah, but when you say she didn't understand it, I'm assuming you explained it.
Of course, but when your whole kind of routine and life just changes just like that overnight, for children, it didn't make any sense to her, because why are you closing the schools? That's where they used to feel safe. And now lots of children see, well, if the school was closed during lockdown, just at the drop of a hat twice, then we can kind of casually go in and out when we need to as well.
And tell me, though, whether at the time you respected the decision, although it was an absolute pain in every way, but whether you thought, well, good, because this keeps us safe, this means we're inside our own 4 walls, this means we're not going to catch it, and we're not going to catch it. Good, we'll all be all right at the end, we'll all trundle through until it's over and they open the doors again. Or did you at the time think it was not right?
I thought at the time it was really bad, especially as other countries didn't necessarily shut their schools.
Most of them did, didn't they? Wasn't only Sweden the exception?
Oh, okay. I'm not sure. But also the fact that other places in the UK were opened, like you say, pubs were opened before schools. That was a bit contradictory and weird.
And do you think that your daughter, the one who was 10 that you're talking about, do you think she's made up for the lost time, or do you think it will have had a permanent impact on her? I hope it doesn't. But do you think it does?
She didn't academically, and because academically she didn't, so then, of course not, because socially she hasn't. So now, it's not just her I'm talking about, it's lots of children, her cohort of her age, who did their GCSEs this summer.
Yeah.
The impact of closing the schools will have long-lasting effect on most of those children.
So socially, how is she different from the girl you would have expected her to be?
She lost a lot of, because she was going on to secondary school, she was in the last year of primary going on to secondary.
Yes.
So they missed out on all the kind of end of school.
Everybody said that was a big deal. They didn't get to have their final assembly. They didn't get to have their final farewell. They didn't get to say goodbye to anyone, and they all dispersed. Yeah. So you really lived through that with her. So that was very, very upsetting and disappointing for her, I'm sure.
But the long-term effect of that is like there wasn't a proper transition. So you don't have proper closure in a massive part of your life, which is school, where you spend a lot of time.
Yes.
Then it was really difficult for her to then transfer to her secondary school, and consequently when they closed the schools again, she didn't go back to school for about 6 months, 7 months, or 8 months, I think it was. She almost missed an academic year because she was too kind of upset about the whole thing.
Anxious, yes. Well, that anxiety, but, as we know, has become an epidemic. And it turns out that my daughter's an expert on it. We ended up doing a podcast on it. And my role is really to keep saying, my God, I never really realised I didn't, explain it because it's so extraordinary. But you definitely have lived through it. Thank you very much for ringing, Claire. Really appreciate it. Let's go to Claire in Putney. Hello, Claire.
Hello, Vanessa.
Oh, hello. I recognise your voice, don't I?
In the same way I always recognise yours.
Tell me about lockdown and the effect of children on the schools closing.
Yes, I think it really did have an effect. And I think, first of all, I think within 3 weeks of the lockdown, when it became apparent that the vast majority of people suffering badly from COVID were very old or very ill,
yes,
I think actually we should have got everyone back out, the young to university, the young and the very elderly and vulnerable could have shielded. And I think I'm correct in saying that when Matt Hancock wanted the schools to go back, the teachers refused because they were saying they didn't want to risk catching COVID. I think I'm right on that. And certainly with our grandchildren, our eldest grandchild was very, very vivacious and loads of friends, loved mixing with all his peer group.
Yes.
And his younger sister spent her very early years in lockdown, and it took her a long time to be able to mix and have friends at school because she was so used to being stuck at home with her parents and grandparents.
And would you say that she's never kind of, as they say, kind of made up for lost time, or
No. Luckily, she has made up for lost time. She's now happy, lots of friends and so on. But I think a lot of children won't have made up for lost time. And I also think university students, they missed out on learning how to socialise with friends and having fun. And there's been a lot of stuff in the media about a lot of the young are afraid to speak on the telephone.
Yes, there has.
They just seem, and in fact, I was trying to phone someone the other day and it was maddening. She just wouldn't ring me back. All she would do is email me.
Yeah.
And I just think there's a whole generation now of the very young who were isolated and didn't learn how to make friends. And the older ones, the teenagers and things, also just got used to spending all their time at home watching telly on their phone to friends. And I think it's been hugely damaging.
And do you think is there any point at all? Are you with the Children's Commissioner on the idea of the Prime Minister at the end of the COVID inquiry apologising to Britain's children and saying, I didn't do you proud, I let you down, it was a terrible mistake, even though he wasn't even in power at the time, but whoever's the PM then?
Yes, well, I don't think the current Prime Minister can apologise for decisions made when Boris was Prime Minister.
No.
But I do think, very early on, I don't know if you remember, there was the Great Barrington debate where, with people like Jonathan Sumption, were all saying, look, we must end the lockdown, we need to get out, this isn't killing people. And so there was a lot of pressure to say, but, Whitty and Vallance and others just kept going, oh, no, we've got to stay at home. And I actually had a letter published in the Telegraph where I said if Whitty and Vallance were my doctors, I'd be asking for a second opinion.
Let me just tell people that you are medical. You were a nurse originally, right?
Yes, nurse and midwife.
Nurse and midwife,
yes.
Exactly. Nurse and then midwife. So, and people might not know who you are, but you're Claire Byam-Cook, the very famous breastfeeding consultant. I recognise your voice at a million paces. But as a medic at the time, Claire, what were you thinking? Because at the time, I was sitting there at the BBC taking calls from people every single day, and it was astounding how many people were on ventilators in hospital who then would come out, in a terribly depleted state and tell the story of how they just about survived. And I remember one of them was a 42-year-old tree surgeon. They weren't necessarily the very old people or those with underlying health conditions that we were being told were getting very, very sick. So there always was this fear, I think, in most people's hearts that it could be them.
Well, it's certainly true that some people who weren't very old or very vulnerable got very, very ill.
Yes.
But half of the sort of Great Barrington debate and others, people like me were saying, but more people are going to die through not getting their cancer treatment and not getting diagnosis. So, of course, if your relative is the one who gets very ill, it's absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
But I think to have the whole country in sort of lockdown was very damaging. And I think, and also, as you say, me being sort of vaguely medical, I was astounded how many people simply didn't understand how germs were spread. So I remember one chap phoned into a radio station, absolutely outraged that when he went to the local supermarket, people were picking up fruit and veg with their bare hands, and he was wearing gloves. But what he didn't realise was as soon as he picked up an apple with COVID on it, it then went on to his gloves. So when he picked up the next apple, he was putting COVID back onto the next apple. So I think lots of people just didn't understand how germs were spread, and they were panicking. And I think we should have, and I'm not saying this with the benefit of hindsight, but I was with Sweden, is look, once the statistics are that the majority of people were very old, it's like a bad flu year. Bad flu year, people died, but we didn't all go into lockdown. We just accepted.
Claire, I'm going to stop you there. I appreciate the call. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to continue this conversation. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC. The time 5:32. It's time for the news with Emery Lane.
Donald Trump's issued a new ultimatum to Hamas. Writing on Truth Social, he says they need to move quickly to release Israeli hostages or all bets will be off. The US president says Israel has stopped the bombing, which he appreciates. Police investigating the attack on a synagogue in Manchester have been given more time to interview the people in custody. Officers can hold 4 of them for another 5 days. They're being questioned on suspicion of preparing acts of terrorism. 175 people have been arrested in central London for supporting the banned group Palestine Action. Hundreds of people have gathered at rallies in London and Manchester. The Prime Minister called for them to be cancelled to respect the grief of British Jews. LBC weather, winds are easing around the country. It's going to be pretty dry this evening. Tomorrow we'll see a bright start for most, but it will get cloudier by the afternoon. There could be a few showers in places. A high of 16 degrees.
This is LBC.
Yeah, I'm one of their biggest fans. I've got all the vinyl. First saw them at a tiny little place in Camden. Then as festival headliners a few years back. Oh, now that was special. So there's no chance I'd miss their world tour. In London, Lisbon and LA. Good thing I've been saving.
From down the road to across the globe, saving gets you there. Join the millions of people already saving with NS&I. Visit nsandi.com.
One of the best things about a holiday with Saga is your chauffeur, who'll pick you up and drive you to your departure point. Whether you're cruising through Europe's iconic cities along the Danube or enjoying a rainforest tour through Costa Rica. Even better, they'll pick you up and drive you home again afterwards. 2026 season now on sale. Search Saga Holidays. Experience is everything. Nationwide chauffeur service available on UK mainland. Full terms apply. Over 50s only.
Very good price.
That's cheap.
Very good price.
All the trains.
Very good price.
Smooth ride.
Very good price.
Try it out.
Very good price.
Oh, wow!
If price is your priority, we've got that.
Best price guarantee.
Or we'll refund the difference. Great journeys start with Trainline. Subject to conditions and exclusions. Valid if a lower same-day fare is found elsewhere. Full T's and C's at trainline.com.
At Morrison's, save 25% with your More card when you buy 6 or more bottles of wine or fizz, including champagne. Choose from over 300 bottles, like Mudhouse Sauvignon Blanc, 19 Crimes Red, La Vieille Ferme Rosé, the Best Prosecco, Moet Brut, and more. Pay less with More card.
Morrison's to shop at Morrison's.
Majority of stores, max 36, exclude Scotland and Morrison's Deli. More card app required 18 plus. Selected 75 centilitre bottles. Online varies. Ends 12th of October. Please drink responsibly.
This is LBC. Message Vanessa Feltz on WhatsApp now. 0345 60 60 973.
So we're going to be talking about the impact of school closures on your children, the COVID situation. Why don't we go to James in Marlow first, actually, and talk to him about it? And then we're going to segue into the cost of motherhood. Apparently it's £65,000. What? It's called the motherhood penalty. We're going to be talking about that in just a minute. But first, let's talk to James. James, the closure of schools, did it have an impact on you? On your children, do you think? Is he there? James in Marlow?
Hi,
hello. Oh, hi, James.
It did, yes.
Yes.
But I actually think it had a... Hi there.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
there.
Yes, yes.
Yes, it had a really good positive effect, actually, for my daughter.
In what way?
So my youngest was able to kind of have one-to-one tuition with me.
Yes.
Which meant that she really excelled. She was at the bottom of the year when she first started during COVID.
Yeah.
And by the end, she was kind of above middle against her peers.
Gosh.
Plus also just being able to spend time with her in a very different way was lovely. So I was very fortunate in that sense that we could spend time teaching her, which wouldn't have had otherwise.
How come you weren't working like everybody else and just too busy and having absolutely no time for her and having to fit her in among absolutely all the other terrible toils and trials of work? What is happening with this?
So thankfully, the work I was able to do shifted. It was...
I don't know what's happening. We've got a time delay for some reason, which is a bit annoying. So I think we may terminate the conversation, say thank you very much indeed, James. But taking your calls on this, the impact of children on school closure. If you're a teacher, I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you're a teacher and relieved that the schools were closed. If you were a parent that could see that it wasn't doing your children any good and it still hasn't, then give me a call, 0345 6060 973. The story is that Anne Longhurst, the former Children's Commissioner, thinks that the Prime Minister should apologise to Britain's children for letting them down so badly by closing the schools in lockdown. And I wonder whether you can see the impact, the effect on your own children. I'm going to come to Sam in Cardiff in a moment. But first of all, this is the story. Women lose out on an average £65,000 in pay in the first 5 years after having a child. This is according to official data. Monthly earnings are 42% lower in the 5 years after a woman has her first child, according to the Office for National Statistics. It's a trend which campaigners have branded the motherhood penalty. Let's discuss this with my guest, Zeynep Curtin. Good to have you on. She's a lecturer in women's health at the Institute for Women's Health at UCL. Thanks for joining me. You've got a lovely broad smile, but 65k is an awful lot of money to lose just because you had a baby, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I think what's really interesting about this new research that's come out is I think we've all intuitively known that there is this motherhood penalty and that women do lose out financially when they have children. But now we can actually quantify and have a figure on it. And as you said, that's pretty astounding, isn't it? Over 5 years, £65,000.
Astounding, but I suppose it depends, doesn't it, on how much they were earning in the first place. If you were on a very low wage or minimum wage, then you won't be earning as much. Presumably you'll lose less, but it will be a bigger percentage of your total earnings, so the effect will hurt you more.
Yeah, so what they've said is that the average percentage loss is 42%. So that's almost a half of a woman's earnings. So, obviously that's going to be different depending on what you were earning to start off with. And there is an indication that women who were earning higher amounts are also losing out higher amounts. But an average of 42% loss in earnings just at a time when, of course, your costs are also going up because you now have this child or these children to take care of, is incredibly unfair in 2025.
And I suppose, would you say that it varies depending on how quickly you go back to work after having had the baby, or immediately your earnings get sucked up by childcare and therefore you don't, even if you go back very quickly, you don't recoup that money?
Yeah, so there was a range of different factors that they talked about. And in the first year after women have a child, that's where the biggest drop is, of course. And that's a time when most women are on extended leave. But the penalty does continue for 5 years. So even for the women who are returning to work. And I think what's really interesting is this builds on some research that ONS published earlier in the year that showed that there's a financial penalty for women in employment, even if they've just had a miscarriage. So there, of course, we're not talking about women who've had children and are then leaving work, but even women who have a miscarriage are on average earning £4,000 less 5 years later.
Why?
And that's to do with, well, partly to do with discrimination in the workplace, because if employers feel like you might be about to leave work because you're going to start a family, you might be missing out on promotions, you might be missing out on job security.
I mean, that's clearly against the law, isn't it? I mean, the law prevents employers, potential employers, even asking you if you're intending to have a baby or get pregnant. They're not allowed legally to do that, are they? So the idea that they would penalise you financially or fail to promote you because you'd suffered the misery and trauma of having a miscarriage is absolutely unthinkable, isn't it?
It shouldn't happen, but we know it does, and this is why the work of organisations like Pregnant and Screwed is so important and so needed. Because yes, it's really important having laws in place, but we're also aware that employers are able to get past this in various ways.
And so what's the plan to minimise this damage? What's the plan to eradicate this motherhood penalty? Because now it's so widely publicised, you could imagine putting women right off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a very specific plan, and I think it's an area that we really need to think about, because of course we are also, in a situation where the birth rate has fallen to an all-time low.
Exactly.
And that's a situation that's causing a huge amount of concern for lots of people. Yet, on the other hand, there are so many disincentives for young women to start a family, especially at a time when, financially, many people are in a difficult situation to start off with. So, I think there just needs to be much more of a holistic effort in terms of provision of childcare, provision of good employment benefits and employment security, to at least make sure that women are not going to lose out in such a horrendous financial way.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you, Zainab Gertin, there, lecturer in women's health. Let's go to Andy in Morden, who is calling about this motherhood penalty. Hi, Andy.
Yes, hello.
Blimey, I love hearing your voice. How nice to hear from you.
It's lovely to speak to you as well. So my daughter is pregnant.
Oh, congratulations.
Yep, I'll become a grandpappy for the first time in February.
Fantastic news. Lovely to hear that.
It is marvellous, absolutely marvellous.
Yeah.
And she's already talking about how we can help her in terms of childcare when she goes back to work after she's completed her maternity leave. Because she works for a big corporate and she knows that they can be brutal. So she's just trying to work out what, how, when and what we can do to help her back into the world of work. I mean, she's on a fair whack. She's on a very, very good whack, in fact. But, it just seems so unfair that women are penalised with things like this.
And so what can your daughter do? Is there anything? Because obviously she's not supposed to be penalised for having a baby. That's not meant to be what happens to her, is it?
Well, it's not meant to be what happens, but, you understand that there's all these sly ways that employers can get around it.
Yeah.
It's not a good position for women to be in. And yet, they're the ones that have the babies and not us, not the fellas.
Well, quite. But you would think in 2025 she would be able to sort of march in and say, don't penalise me. I'm sort of legally entitled to do this. I'm supposed to be on an absolute equal playing field with every other employee, and I'm not meant to be taking a financial hit for this, for having a baby. That's not meant to happen to me.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, she works for a foreign company as well, so she does some quite odd hours sometimes.
Yes.
And they're not necessarily going to fit in with, looking down the line, collecting from school or going to nursery or things like that. That's what she's thinking about more than anything else.
Gosh, all right. Well, big congratulations, and can't wait to hear the good news when it happens. All right, I'm taking your calls on the effect of lockdown on children, the closure of schools and the impact it had. I'm going to talk to Sam in Cardiff in just a moment. Let me just read you this. My son lost all resilience in lockdown. If he gets a sniffle or mild virus now, he won't go into university or work. He was 12 and a half when it happened. He was let down badly and is still in a backlog of NHS queues for mental health support. Will an apology make any difference to him? No, says Karen. But David says, no way, no apology needed. I blame weak parenting and over-projection. It was a couple of periods and the same for everyone. Parents should have taken responsibility for the education during that time. Teach them some life skills. Weak excuses from weak people. I know, but some parents were absolutely beleaguered. Some of them had several children at home, a very small accommodation, either one device or no devices. They were working full time. The whole thing was just incredibly difficult to navigate. Very, very difficult indeed. And no escape at all from it, and enormous pressure. If you had a, nice home and two parents and a bit of time, to focus on your children, and everybody was in good mental health at the beginning and good physical health by the end, that was one thing. If you were really hard up financially in a really bad way, and maybe the marriage was in trouble, or you were on your own, or, it for some people it was insurmountably difficult. Obviously the impact on the children was huge. So we're asking about whether you agree with the Children's Commissioner that whichever Prime Minister's in power at the end of the COVID inquiry should apologise to Britain's children for letting them down so badly by closing down our schools. Or maybe you were someone who was in favour of it. Maybe you were a teacher at the time and the first thing you wanted was to get out of that school where all those children were coughing all over you. 0345 6060 973. Not long to call in, but do call in because it'd be good to hear from you. I'm Vanessa Feltz. This is LBC. The time 5:46.
Coming up at 6 on LBC, Natasha Devon.
With some already attempting to leverage the hideous attack on Thursday into further division and hatred, how do we foster unity and allyship?
Natasha Devon on LBC.
Early bird offers end soon in the Furniture Village sale, with huge savings on many sofas, dining, beds and bedroom furniture. And that's on top of sale prices. It's the last few days of early bird offers in the Furniture Village sale. And remember to order in time for Christmas.
Hello, you lot. It's Rylan inside a Marshall store. Because Cinch have only gone and cinched it again, they've partnered with Marshall Motor Group, bringing faff-free servicing to over 70 locations across the country. So while an expert technician gives your motor the once-over, whatever the make or model, you get service too, with a frothy coffee and handy Wi-Fi.
Really done, Rylan.
Take your time, mate. To book your next service, search Cinch Servicing. Cinch. Cars without the faff. See cinch.co.uk/servicing for details, terms and exclusions apply.
Running a ceramic studio is all about balance, right, Nina?
Absolutely. That's why my business deserves the new iPhone 17 Pro. It can help me handle even the busiest workday, from planning my classes to keeping my kiln on track, so my business still holds shape.
The all-new iPhone 17 Pro as your work demands. Your business deserves the most powerful iPhone on EE, the UK's best network. BT and EE, better for business.
Verify at ee.co.uk/claims.
At ulesprosperity.com, you buy the car and we pay you up to £600 per month in rental income. For conditions, visit ulesprosperity.com.
When they're away at uni and the show you all love is on telly. When you're miles apart but still laughing at the same joke. When the emojis come thick and fast.
Triple smiley face and a heart.
I knew they'd love that.
Nothing brings us together like great TV. Make sure your child has a TV licence when they go to uni, so they're covered to watch all TV channels and you can still enjoy all those TV moments in the family group chat.
Leading Britain's conversation with Vanessa Feltz. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
And on the line, Sam in Cardiff. Hi, Sam. So tell me about the impact on your kids of the school shutting down in COVID.
Well, I don't actually have children myself.
Right.
I've got cousins that were affected by
Okay, tell me about it.
And I'm looking as an employer as well.
Yeah.
But I think there's two things that are very much overlooked. Firstly, I think one of the main impacts on children or young adults was the marking system that was implemented at the time, where they were sort of awarded the marks by the teachers rather than sitting examinations.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
And I think that was wholly damaging to their employment and their career and their university life, because it wasn't often an accurate reflection on the child's or the young adult's ability. So there's a generation of children that have gone through school with inaccurate GCSEs and potentially A-levels, who have then maybe got into universities that they wouldn't otherwise have got into, and therefore not potentially been at the level that other students previously would be. So when you're looking as an employer, there's a sort of date range when you're looking at GCSE and A-level and even some universities where you just can't rely on that as an accurate way to determine whether, their ability or what their strengths.
And you don't think everyone could just take a view, knowing it was that particular year and they were in that particular extreme circumstance and things were particularly difficult, and therefore, you take a bit of poetic license for the grade. Surely that's not meant to condemn you to some kind of purgatory for the rest of your life, is it? Why can everyone just snap out of it, for goodness sake?
Well, the cost of recruiting is massive for employers, so it's a risk that you would ideally not take. I mean, I think, in 5 years' time, once there is some employment and sort of work history, it will not be such a big deal. But I think what the teachers did was wholly damaging with the grades.
Do you really think so? I thought they did it for excellent reasons.
No, they did it for excellent reasons. However, the grades that year were significantly higher than they were previously.
No, we know that, but we know why. It was because they were sort of taking a lenient view because things were, so incredibly difficult.
Yes, but I'm not sure whether that lenient view was actually in the student's best interests at the time. And I think, my partner actually is Indian and went through COVID, I guess, the end of the A-level there.
Yeah.
And socially, he struggles massively with going to university over and above coming from India to Wales in order to study. But it's very noticeable how sort of socially withdrawn he is compared to what I was and what other generations are.
I mean, lots of people will mind that much more than marks, won't they? They will. The socially withdrawn thing. I mean, you heard Claire Byam-Cook say just earlier, her I think it was her grandchild or something, just won't speak on the phone, just won't take that kind of social step of actually speaking to another human being. I mean, I think lots of people feel that their kids didn't have the right kind of, I'm saying mating rituals, the bit where you cop off with other people at parties or whatever else, or behind the bike shed, as I fondly recall, not doing any of that. And that sets you back. I think people will think maybe more than not getting the right marks or your marks being slightly cooked by the teachers.
Yeah, I agree. However, my partner also has ADHD, and I don't know if it's related to that, but he has the opposite problem with the phone. He will spend 2 or 3 hours on FaceTime or WhatsApp video calls with people because the sense of time with the ADHD is obviously different, but also it pushed people towards communicating in that way, whereas most people pre-COVID would have gone for a coffee for a couple of hours. Now it's more socially acceptable and almost expected to have longer phone calls or longer video calls or use technology to communicate with people, which is equally as damaging, time consuming, and from, as you said, the sort of human interaction.
Yes, quite. All right, agreed. Let's go to Monica in Basildon. Hello, Monica. Should the PM apologise to Britain's children for letting them down so badly by shutting down the schools?
Oh, hello.
Hello. Hi, you're on the radio.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I think they should definitely apologise to school children because I could definitely see that my younger brother, struggled to look for work because his CV looked very basic. There was just his grades and a personal statement. Like, he had no work experience because people in his year didn't do work experience for 2 weeks.
Sure. How old was he when everything locked down, your brother?
I think he was around 17.
So it was a particularly dreadful age for that to happen to you, wasn't it? In every way, your whole life was on hold in this ghastly way, and you're stuck with your parents, who obviously you can't stand when you're 17. There's nothing worse. And you can't get out to your friends, who are the only people you really care about on earth. You can't cop off with anyone, which is deadly. And you don't know what the hell's going to happen about your future life in terms of work or university or whatever you're meant to be doing. Absolutely dreadful. How old were you at that time?
Oh, I was old. I was 28.
Right, okay, so you're a grown-up, so you've a big age gap between the two of you. So then what happened to him afterwards then? Because you say his CV looked bare and sort of...
Like, he literally was applying for work. People were coming back saying you have no experience. And as for him, as a black boy, they're already scrutinised already, so it's...
So what has happened to him since?
No, he's got a permanent job now.
Oh, good.
And he's still applying for apprenticeships, but, at least he's working. at least.
But at the time, do you remember how you felt? At the time, were your family thinking, thank goodness we're locked down, thank goodness we're not going to catch it, thank goodness, remember people saying a greater risk to people from Afro-Caribbean communities and all that kind of a thing? Do you remember all that? And then vitamin D, for God's sake, take it, and all of that. Do you remember at the time people thinking, good, what a relief, or not?
Yeah, we felt safe. We did get COVID, but we didn't suffer as much. But it's just younger children. I could see my brother. He looked very sad and depressed.
Yes.
And he's my youngest brother. It was difficult to just see him sinking in the deep hole, just watching him just.
I think you're being really honest about it. And I think lots of people felt the same. Absolutely. That he was not living the life that as a 17-year-old boy should have been living.
Yeah, he missed a lot.
Missed a hell of a lot. Yeah. But the people who think kids are resilient, they'll make it up. They'll just, they'll sort of speed through it, get out the other side and I
know, but he's missed such a big experience, like end of year, prom, like he didn't get any of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, thank you very much, Monica. Lots of love to you. Great call. Let's talk to Mark in Bromley about this. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Vanessa.
What do you think?
Well, I think an apology probably is due. I'm not sure what use it will be. But certainly I think the way that, not because the schools were closed, but just how they managed the children's education during that time.
Do you think the children were properly at the bottom of the pile, the bottom of the heap when it came to prioritising? They weren't cared about? Or do you think it was just a misjudgment in the sort of haste and the panic of a pandemic, which is kind of forgivable because, who isn't worried, sick and doing what they can as quickly as possible? Or do you think it was pressure from the teachers? Well, how do you think it came about anyway?
I think it was a mixture of all of those, and I think we should not forget how ill-prepared we were for a pandemic, which we knew we were due. The Conservatives decided to ignore a report and decided not to prepare for a pandemic. So I think they do have a lot to answer for. And if anybody's going to issue an apology, it should be Boris Johnson. He's not, he's not gone away. He's still here.
Yes,
he was the person
around.
responsible.
I mean, yes, but obviously, with the advice of the key scientists at the time, Sir Patrick Vallance, etc., he wasn't just making these decisions all on his own. And you could imagine him coming out and making a big mea culpa to the children of the country. I don't know what good any of that would do anyway. But thank you very much indeed for calling. Let's talk to Mark in Coventry. What do you think, Mark?
Hi, I'm a teacher, Vanessa.
Oh, good. So tell me what you think, because you're at the very end of the show, so speak really fast. What do you think?
OK, I will. So from March 2020 to April 2021, on average in England, children missed 61 days of schooling.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. They didn't have to live through the Second World War in 6 years and being evacuated to another place, anything like that. So I think we're using it as an excuse for loads of problems in society today, and we shouldn't be doing so.
As a teacher at the time, were you in favour of locking down? Did you not want to go to school?
Because I was very scared that I might get ill and die. And I think if we're all honest, we all felt a bit like that at the time.
I think loads of people have forgotten that bit. Honestly, I do.
Yeah,
loads of people are very big gung-ho about the whole thing. I think I was scared of dying. I didn't like the idea of going into one of those Nightingale hospitals and never coming out again. I didn't fancy that at all. I really didn't. And some people felt it definitely wouldn't be them. I didn't see why it shouldn't be me, and I really didn't want it to be. Not at all. So I'm glad you said that. You didn't want to catch it, you didn't want to die, and you were relieved. I appreciate it. And also much shorter, 61 days off school than living through the entire Second World War, 6 years, being evacuated and everything else. Thank you so much. Excellent show. Although I say so myself, of course. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app, on the new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion. Put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio and listen to a range of podcasts. Download the all-new official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 9 on LBC, it's Daniel Barnett. But now I'm delighted to say it is the lovely Natasha Devon, looking exquisite today.
Oh, thank you very much, Vanessa. Thursday's terrorist attack on a synagogue was tragic and appalling as the whole country tried to process in its immediate aftermath. Some attempted to leverage the emotions surrounding the event to promote further division and hatred. There were some who jumped to immediately blame anyone who protests the actions of the Israeli government in Palestine, whilst others countered with Islamophobic rhetoric. We're at a point now where we need unity and allyship, not mudslinging and ramping up of tensions. But how do we do that? Tommy Robinson has been invited by the Israeli government as an ambassador on combating anti-Semitism. Yes, you heard that right.